Hello there, welcome back to the booth here in Barcelona, Spain. We're here for Mythic Championship 4. I am Marshall Sutcliffe. That is Paul Cheon. Look, this is the top 8, and we're going to kick things off, of course, with the quarterfinals. Now what we do is we group them. We'll play 2 quarterfinals simultaneously. It's not actually at the same time. We'll start to overlap them and go back and forth. And then we'll, of course, cover the other set of them. First up, though, we've got Manuel Lenz. He's playing against Zhiyang Zhang, and as you can see, 2 very different approaches to the format. One of them using an infinite combo with Urza ThopterSword, on the other side, the old meat grinder, Jund, in the hands of Zhiyang Zhang.
Yeah, and this isn't a matchup that, you know, we can kind of expect the game to go kind of long. Urza ThopterSword is surprisingly resilient. It actually just has a lot of ways to cycle through its deck. Arkham's Astrolabe, the Ichor Wellspring. So, you know, at any point in the game, it can just kind of go off. I know the Jund deck has the ability to really disrupt your game plan with hand disruption, but out of nowhere, you can just top deck Urza High Lord Artificer, and all of a sudden, you're way back into the game.
Yeah, we've also seen a few different ways to actually get these pieces onto the battlefield, and we'll see if Manuel Lenz can do such. Otherwise, it's going to be Jund doing Jund things. I believe the term is Jund him out.
Yep.
That's the technical
classic
R&D.
Jund him out. That's the old turn 1 Inquisition or Thoughtseize into Tarmogoyf wave strategy. Although it sounds like a lot more people are leaning towards the Ren and 6 now. That's the new toy that Jund has access to.
All right, we're underway here. Let's see. First things first for Manuel Lenz. This has got to be a good start. Arkham's Astrolabe and Mox Opal on the battlefield for him off of that snow-covered island.
But Zhang also with the classic turn 1 hand disruption spell, but Inquisition unable to get cards with converted mana cost 4 or greater, and Manuel has 2 copies of Urza in his hand, and that is the most important card in the deck. It is by far the strongest card, and it gives you not only just a gigantic threat in the form of the construct that it makes, but it also means that all these artifacts that are in play generate mana as well.
Urza Lord High Artificer having a major impact on Modern as the centerpiece for this combo deck out of Modern Horizons. Not the only card to affect Modern significantly, but certainly one of the top 3. You know, I think of Ren and 6 and Hogak as the other 2.
Right, definitely.
And
what about Arkham's Astrolabe?
You know, I like the card. I do like the card. Not sure if I have it on that list, but...
And Zhang with another Inquisition off the top, but it does not get the Urzas, the pair of Urzas in Manuel's hand. You know, generally, Inquisition is the type of card that players tend to play the full 4 copies of over Thoughtseize, because Inquisition does not make it so that you lose life. You know, Thoughtseize against the aggressive decks are considerably worse. Playing against a burn deck, you're just going to take the 2 damage. But Zhang just knows that he's not going to be able to really nab anything significant here with the Inquisition, so might just go for a Dark Confidant here instead to start trying to string together some removal spells, maybe get that Urza off the battlefield. But Manuel does need to draw a land here. He's got 2 lands and a Mox Opal, so he only has 3 mana sources right now. He's got the Spell Bomb, which doesn't do it either, so he's actually not going to be able to slam the Urza Lord High Artificer this turn. But that's exactly what he needed, finding a land here off the top. You can run out the Watery Grave, and next turn he will have access to casting in Urza.
Well, in the meantime, Dark Confidant comes down here for Zhang. And is that a main deck? Yeah, it is. Grafdigger's Cage.
Yeah, typically because this deck plays War of Invention, it has a lot of what we like to call, you know, toolbox cards or silver bullets, where, you know, if you have War of Invention and you War of Invention for these one-ofs, you know, these cards go such a long way in a lot of different matchups. You know, cards like Ensnaring Bridge, Grafdigger's Cage, depending on what you play against, they are excellent tutor targets for that War.
Does it do anything here against Jund?
It does not. It, you know,
taps for mana?
Taps for mana.
Maybe?
I mean, every you know, they all essentially become a mana rock once you get an Urza in play. Giving you the ability to tap an artifact for blue mana. Basically, if you just play Urza and read it, you just probably find something new about the card every single turn.
Yeah, there's a lot of rule text.
Yeah. Well, you know, and that's why, you know, when I spoke with Brian Brown-Duin about this, he was just like, you know, a card's powerful when there's so much text on it that there's no room for flavor text.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good measuring stick. Also, of course, having an extra artifact just on the battlefield for Urza means that the construct that he creates when he enters the battlefield is that much bigger right now. You know, you don't want to overlook that, right? We're talking about a 4/4, you know, maybe a 5/5. Yeah, 5/5 artifact just alongside your 1/4 Urza. It's like, that ain't bad.
I wonder if Zhang is going to consider firing off a Maelstrom Pulse here on the Mox Opal, just to try to prevent Manuel from hitting land number 4, because Manuel only has 2 cards in hand. They're both Urzas, and Zhang knows about it. So what he really needs to do here is prevent him from hitting land number 4 to cast that Urza. So I think that's on the table. It is a consideration just to try to continue to generate card advantage with that Dark Confidant.
Every turn that goes by that you have a Dark Confidant on the table, it gets better. He's going to go for the 2-for-1, though, and take out the 2 copies of Arkham's Astrolabe rather than the Opal.
Right, this also does shut down the Metalcraft on the Mox Opal, so that was the other consideration.
Yeah, a little more fragile, and that's why.
Right.
Right off the top of the library, boom, a free artifact. Mistress Bauble gives him access to that Mox Opal. And there we go, Urza, Lord High Artificer and friend on the battlefield. That backfired a bit for Zhang.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, there's not a lot of 0-mana artifacts, but that was kind of one of the reasons why I was considering going for the Opal instead of the Astrolabes, because, you know, had he gone for the Opal, he would not have had land number 4 for Urza.
Yeah, he would have had to just draw a land off the top of the library there, which of course is also not unlikely.
And it's a bit awkward here because that construct is a 4/4, and Zhang currently has Lightning Bolt in hand and no actual way to kill any creature.
He found a land off of Dark Confidant, then his draw step. He's got at least 1 Tarmogoyf in his hand. It looks like he's actually got a pair of Tarmogoyfs in his hand and may just run both of those out here. There they are.
He needs to apply pressure because Manuel, next turn, once he untaps, he's going to have access to a ton of mana, not only with the 3 lands in play, but with the 3 artifacts and also the construct. He has access to 7 mana. And Urza has an additional ability, which is extremely powerful against a deck that's trying to tax your resources. That 5 ability, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. So effectively, it lets you kind of draw a card and play that card for free every turn. A nice draw here from Manuel as well. Word of Invention off the top. So a lot of different considerations here probably. He might choose to hold on to it until he draws, you know, 1 piece of his combo. He's got both Thopter Foundry and 2 copies of Sword of the Meek. Maybe he waits to find one of those and then uses Worth to find the other copy. He could also just Word of Invention for Thopter Foundry. I think it's just an extremely reasonable option here as well.
He's going to go ahead and just put 5 mana into Urza, Lord High Artificer, and exile the top card. Yeah, give it a shuffle. Cut,
all right.
Whatever.
What's on top? See? Even Zhang, who top 8 of this event, is reading the card.
Yeah, he's asking if he's going to shuffle it, but yeah, just cut it or shuffle it or whatever.
Okay, it sounds like maybe the question was if Grafdigger's Cage.
I think he was just asking. Oh, jeez,
okay.
hello. Hello.
Wow,
Sword of the Meek off the top
hit.
there. That's 1/2 of the combo, and as you mentioned before, with Word of Invention in his hand.
Right, so now the Word of Invention.
The other one next turn.
Word of Invention can now go fetch the Thopter Foundry. Does he have the mana to cast Word for 2? It looks like he's 1 short.
He is.
Or 2 short.
Yeah, he's going to have to wait till next turn to do that. But Zhang is looking at it like, welp.
Yeah.
This is very short clock. Also, the construct got a little bigger.
Ooh, and yeah, we're just running out the...
And even a little bigger still.
Pay to equip the construct here.
Does that put it out of double bolt range or something? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, there's 5 artifacts in play, so it's a 5/5, and then Sword of the Meek gives +1/+2.
Right.
So it's a 6/7, yeah.
So it's actually just out of range. There's a Bloodbraid Elf.
That's 4 damage.
4 damage, and a land. The 2 copies of Inquisition of Kozilek kind of rotting in hand here for Zhang.
Yeah,
although I suppose he can fire one off now. He does not know about the War of Invention, I don't think. So
no, he does not. He only knows about the Urza. So I don't think the top priority is firing off Inquisition here. I think he's probably just going to look for a removal effect. So it might be just running out the Bloodbraid Elf and just hope to hit something like an Abrupt Decay or an Assassin's Trophy off the top to get that Urza off the board. That Urza just cannot stay in play. It's so hard for the Gen deck to fight.
So this is a big spin here for Zhang, who's going to fire off this Bloodbraid Elf and really hope to hit a removal spell for Urza as soon as possible. And
Liliana.
Not quite.
So probably a dead construct here if he chooses to minus the Liliana.
And Manuel's at 18 life.
Yeah. Not enough pressure here. We have a pair of Tarmogoyfs here.
I suppose those dice are just representing that they're 3 power currently. Those aren't counters, right?
Right.
Usually you don't see players use dice that way.
Well, yeah. Given that there's a Bloodbraid Elf, though, Manuel might actually just choose not to block with the Urza, given that it's a 1/4, just to kind of play around Lightning Bolt, because if he does have the ability to untap next turn, he can basically do what Eduardo talked about earlier, which is infinite 1/1s, infinite life, and infinite cards.
And that is not something that John is going to be able to beat. Now, Zhang could just slam with the team here, right?
Yeah.
Send everything. And if Urza jumps in front of anything, use the bolt to finish off Urza.
Yeah, I think he's okay with losing the Liliana here, and he's also okay with just trading the Dark Confidant plus Lightning Bolt to get Urza off the battlefield.
Yeah, that's a lot of respect for Urza, but Urza certainly earned it. So here we go, everything into the red zone for Zhiyang Zhang.
And now Manuel just has to run to math. He goes, what happens if you Lightning Bolt me? If you Lightning Bolt me, that puts an instant in the graveyard. Currently, Tarmogoyf, it looks like, is a 3/4. They will become 4/5s. So that'll be 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 2 plus 3. So 8, 11, 13. That'll be 16 damage.
That's
so he'll be 2 points short of killing Manuel.
This is where you ask, have you played a land yet?
right. How many cards in hand?
I don't want to get 2 bolts to the face, but if it's only 1 possible, then he's okay to take this because his life total will cleanly rebound next turn.
Would a Tarfire be enough?
Yeah. Now the interesting part is that Zhang has Inquisition of Kozilek in his hand. So since he realizes, well, I can't kill you with this anyway, he'll probably just fire off Inquisition and nab the whir.
Right, and if that happens, I mean, he's in pretty good position,
yes,
right?
Very good.
So curious to see what's actually going to happen.
This is exactly what Manuel did not want to see, and you can see the look on his face. He's like, oh.
So Manuel needs to find a Thopter Foundry here.
Yes, or a whir.
Or a whir. Or hit it off the Urza. I mean, he's got a few cards here, but this is a lot of pressure. There's a lot of creatures on the battlefield.
Okay, this is a huge top deck in game 1. Manuel Lenz had it all lined up. He was going to go infinite this turn, and he is not able to unless the top of his library cooperates.
All right, now thinking about whether or not he needs to do something on his upkeep. He does have a Mishra's Bubble.
Does he find it? Oh, no. It is a Mox Opal. And in fact, a redundant copy. That is absolutely not what he wanted to see. Now, if he just activates Urza and hits it, is that good enough?
Yes. Yes, it will be.
So that's the last chance?
So a blind flip off of an Urza Lord High Artificer. I mean, I'm trying to think about what other things he could consider to do here, right? Like if he just runs out the Urza, it is legendary, so he's not going to be able to keep one of them in play, right? And he's going to make a construct. He's going to have 2 blockers, but that means Bloodbraid Elf and Dark Confidant still get through, and the Lightning Bolt should be enough to seal the deal.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, this is this is a tight spot here for Manuel Lenz. He, well, I guess he does have that Mishra's Bauble. He can take a look. Though when you
draw
activate,
trigger doesn't happen until
it's an upkeep draw trigger, and you have to shuffle anyway.
So the reason why he's doing that is if War of Invention is on top, he will not activate Urza's ability, just choose to draw the whir. Then at instant speed on Zhang's upkeep, will draw the whir, cast it, and then go infinite.
That's pretty good.
Or try to go infinite.
That's pretty good, but it looks like it wasn't. So
all right,
he's going to pay the 5 mana and spin the wheel. This is a one-shot here for Thopter Foundry, basically to win the game.
Right.
And if he whiffs, he's dead.
There has to be an ensnaring bridge, right? He could hit ensnaring bridge.
Okay.
So that is another card that he can hit to try to stay alive.
Yeah. What is he down to? One card.
Yeah, he's down to one card, so he won't be able to get attacked.
I guess he technically has two, but he could play the
So
opal.
that's 3 Thopter Foundries and an ensnaring bridge.
That's 4 outs. You can't ask for much more than that. Does he hit it? Oh, no. It's a land. And that is going to prompt death here in game number 1 for Manuel Lenz. Zhiyang Zhang. Well, he did it.
Junded him out.
He junded him out. That's exactly how he lined it up. But I'll tell you what, absolutely critical, that second Inquisition of Kozilek there to take away the whir. That entire game plan that Zhiyang Zhang put together ended up hinging on that, taking away the whir of invention, at least as the game played out.
Yeah, and it's actually just a little bit unfortunate that, like, Zhang had nothing else to do because he knew about the one other card in hand in Urza. If he had anything else relevant to do, he probably wouldn't have cast that Inquisition. But because he had nothing else to do with his mana, he's like, all right, whatever, I have 1 mana. I'm just going to run this out and see what happens. And he actually got the pivotal card.
Wow. Also, by the way, in the feature match area, we have Thoralf Severin playing against David Mines. We're going to be checking in on that and keeping up with both of our matches going forward. First, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more right after this.
Hey everybody, I'm with world champion Javier Dominguez here, and we're going to crack a pack of Modern Horizons. And as you're doing that, Javier, let me know your favorite color combo in Modern Horizons.
Blue-black, ninjas, not even close.
So why do you think blue-black ninjas is so good in this format?
I think it just has most good matchups. Like, they had like some of the best cards, and also like really hard to attack. Like, there's no counter strategy to ninjas. I think that's why it's the best.
And they just come out of nowhere and surprise you. And ooh, I heard an ooh here. All right, so what do we like here in this pack?
The Hogak.
Good in Modern, yeah. I think still.
I thought it's playable in Modern, you know? Like, imagine if you pair this card with, like, you know, Griffer cards and zombies, and yeah, it could be, must try it. I don't even know if this is a pick though.
Oh really? Okay, so talk me through what you're thinking about looking through this pack.
Well, I'm thinking like I like Fate Seer a lot. I think this card is very good.
But it's just a 1/1 flyer for 1.
Scry 2 though. I think Scry 2 is actually kind of close to drawing a card. Imagine a 1/1 flying draws a card. That would be great, right? I think Fate Seer can be almost as good in many decks. So I'm really high in this card. And I think that's the one, I think it's the best one among the others. But I think maybe Hogak is better.
This is a tough choice for you, it looks like.
If I open this, I think I will probably pick Hogak because it's hard to replace. Like, it is a very unique card, and it's also like good in green and black. It's more like a green card, I think, but yeah, I think Hogak. Yes.
All right, so you love ninjas most of all, but Hogak good enough to push you into a graveyard synergy?
Yeah, I think so. I think I will try to pair it with Alter of Dementia. Maybe that works.
Oh, Alter of Dementia, okay.
So.
All right, we're just building a Modern deck here in draft. So Hogak, Arisen Necropolis, the pick here for Javier Dominguez in Modern Horizons draft.
And welcome back to the booth. So as I mentioned before, we're in the quarterfinals here in Barcelona. We're running both at the same time. So there's 2 sets of quarterfinals. We're covering 2 of them right now. The other one is Thoralf Severin versus David Mines. This is, well, a similar matchup in the sense of one of them is playing Jund, but on the other side, much different.
Much different. Yeah. This is probably Jund's worst matchup, at least in the pre-sideboarded games. Jund simply just does not put enough pressure or disruption to stop Tron from doing what they need to do. All of the removal spells in the Jund deck are just not going to do anything in this matchup.
So we are actually into game 2 here now. We'll kind of be bouncing game to game between our 2 matches in the feature match area. But game number 1, well, as you kind of outlined there, Paul, went to Thoralf Severin. Now, I'll also remind you that we are playing best 3 out of 5 here in the top 8 with the big high stakes, you know, a little bit of smoothing out there seems appropriate. So the way this works is the first 2 games are played without sideboards available, and then any of the remaining games are eligible for sideboarded cards. So right now, this is another game 1, if you will, right. Although it is, of course, game number 2.
You can see how important being on the play is in this matchup here, because now that David is on the play here, he was able to go turn 1 Inquisition, and he's going to strip that Expedition map out of Severin's hand. So now he's only got those 2 Tron pieces, but still needs to find a way to get piece number 3.
Relic of Progenitus is the play here for Severin. He's could do a little bit with that, but Jund generally doesn't mind.
Yeah, it's interesting that he chose to go with the Relic. I mean, he's got to be very familiar with this matchup. But if you play the turn 1 Chromatic Sphere, that gives you a much higher chance of getting Tron on turn 3, because if you draw something like an Ancient Stirrings or a Sylvan Scrying, on turn 2 you can fire that off and then try to find piece number 3 and play out a turn 3 threat.
Well, he lost that sphere too.
Right. But lots of redundancy in the Tron deck, of course, and we see a star off the top here for Thoralf.
So he's got a power plant and a tower. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Just peel that mine next turn and you're good to go.
Yeah, and playing the Relic does make some sense in this matchup. Keep in mind the Jund decks nowadays are differently built because of newcomer Ren and 6. And by having Relic of Progenitus in play, it means that David cannot run out Ren and 6 and start getting back lands every single turn if he found a fetch land.
Of course, good against Tarmogoyf as well for a little bit later down the line.
Right.
And the more activations you get, the better here, because remember, Relic has 2 different modes. You can just tap it to have a player choose a card in their graveyard and exile it. Oh, and look at this from David Mines, going for Assassin's Trophy on the tower. And trying to disrupt the plans here. This, by the way, is a matchup that we've seen already. And what I mean is these 2 players played each other, and David did this exact same thing to him yesterday.
Yeah, so Thoralf's going to get a forest. He actually kind of needed a green source, but of course would prefer to have the Tron piece more. And David also has the 1-2 punch in his main configuration with Assassin's Trophy and Surgical Extraction. And that is a way to potentially remove all the Tron pieces from your opponent's deck. However, Relic of Progenitus actually counters that. If you have one that's active in play, if they go for Surgical Extraction on your Tron land, you can Relic in response and exile that card, fizzling the Surgical Extraction.
That's right. It was actually a Tron piece drawn off of that Chromatic Star, but unfortunately for Thoralf, it was another power plant. So he actually only has access to 1 of the 3 possibles right now, although he does have 2 copies of it. That said, he did have 3 mana available. And he's going to run out an Oblivion Stone before passing the turn back. Oblivion Stone, yeah, seems good.
Yeah, and take a look at David's start here. Lots of disruption, but not pressure, right? He still needs to put a pressure on the board. And one thing that I found, you know, at least from the Jund side is, yeah, sure, I had all this disruption, but, you know, at some point, maybe Thoralf just starts naturally playing 6 or 7 lands, and once they just start jamming, you know, Wormcoil Engines and Karn Liberated, it's still really difficult to win.
Here's Liliana of the Veil now for David Mines, and I got to say, this draw has been very nice for him. Some Inquisitions to rip away the hand from Thoralf. An Assassin's Trophy to disrupt the mana base, and now Liliana of the Veil to sort of start slamming the door on the possibilities here for Thoralf. That said, never underestimate the Tron deck. It can always come back.
Yeah, definitely. And Thoralf now really wants to get to land number 5 just so he can crack that Oblivion Stone to get Liliana off the board. Looks like a star off the top. I think Thoralf is maybe also considering just running out a Walking Ballista for 2.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's going to do. The presence of Liliana of the Veil dictates that he will lose whatever card was left over in his hand, and I think he just wanted to get in while the getting was good. That is his most powerful option at this point, even if it is just a Ballista for 2.
And the nice part about Ballista for 2 is if David goes minus on the Liliana, that'll go down to 2 loyalty. In response, Thoralf can just sacrifice Walking Ballista to finish off Liliana of the Veil.
So David sees the writing on the wall there and says, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and plus Liliana of the Veil to keep her safe for now. And he's also got Ren and 6 to play.
Likely getting back that Wooded Foothills in his graveyard.
Get it while the getting's good. And this is a really nasty combo that you see here. Liliana of the Veil effectively drawing, Ren and 6 effectively drawing you an extra card every turn, while Liliana of the Veil is stripping away the cards from your opponent, and that Relic couldn't really keep up to keep Ren and 6 from getting value there. A Chromatic Star off the top of the library here for Thoralf Severin. What can he do?
So he can finish off the Liliana this turn if he wants. He can sink all of his mana to put a counter onto the Ballista, attack Liliana, then use 2 counters from the Ballista to get Liliana on off the board if he wants to preserve that Chromatic Star. However, the Ren and 6 will then be able to pick off the Walking Ballista as it will be down to 1 counter.
Yeah, and then he can use that counter to not quite finish off Ren and 6, so it's a little awkward here for Thoralf. So he is, though, going to attack Liliana of the Veil and add a counter to the Ballista. That puts her down to 2 loyalty. And he's going to put her to 1 loyalty and pass the turn back.
All right, so putting it down to 1 loyalty means that David can't use the -2 effect on Liliana to get the Ballista off the battlefield. And it also protects it from the Ren and 6, which has, of course, the 1 damage effect.
Thoralf deciding to take the middle ground here, also noticing that the card in his hand is just a Chromatic Star. If that gets discarded, fine. But David might have something good, and if he wants to plus Liliana to get that last card out of hand, it could cost David a card in his hand. And that's actually how it's played out here as well, Paul.
Right.
It's Tarmogoyf in hand as well as Tireless Tracker. Now, he does have a sequence where he can just play both.
So what David can do here is play Tireless Tracker, fetch Wooded Foothills, get Wooded Foothills back, then play the Wooded Foothills and just get a bunch of clues. Thoralf can break apart some of that by just using the Walking Ballista to kill off the Tireless Tracker. However, that means David will be able to preserve all the Planeswalkers he has in play.
Yeah, you got to like David's position here. You know, he's not completely dominating.
Right.
But he's close.
Right.
Right. This is the type of thing where if these Planeswalkers stick around for another turn or two, he will be in an absolutely dominant position.
So now Thoralf is wondering, does he need to kill this Tireless Tracker in response to the fetch? If he does, he will prevent any clues from being played. And I think you don't want David to accrue a bunch of card advantage. And, you know, Thoralf's in a situation, if he just draws land number 5, he can pop the O-Stone to get rid of the other Planeswalkers in play. However, on the flip side, he could also just wait because David has a bunch of clues, but not a bunch of mana, right?
Right,
so
the clues die too.
Right, the Oblivion Stone will be able to kill the clues. But it looks like he does want to prevent David from drawing cards here.
And of course, the other thing to consider for Thoralf, though, is that he might not draw that land.
Right.
And in that case, maybe the damage is already done.
And he's
going to take the more conservative line here.
Yeah. And
still hoping to draw a land for the turn.
Card advantage engine online, and this relic really hasn't done a whole lot. It hasn't actually been able to prevent David from getting a land back every single turn.
I think that was another Ballista.
Do what you got to do. But, you know, given that there's a Liliana play, he is incentivized to just play out whatever he draws. Might be a question as to whether or not David played a land, but David had 4 lands in play.
Yep, Walking Ballista hits the battlefield once again, and we're in a similar situation to before, where Thoralf finds himself with at least something going on, but he's still significantly behind here.
Yeah, and Ren is ticking up and up and up, and it's going to get close to the emblem, which then gives all your spells retrace. Just need to get it up to 7, as you can see there on the screen. You get an emblem with instants and sorceries in your graveyard have retrace, meaning that you can cast cards out of your graveyard by discarding a card and casting
a land.
Yeah. A land. So things like Lightning Bolt. Apparently, at some point earlier in the tournament, Paul Rietzel retraced Lightning Bolt 5 times.
Wow. So he draws a land, and it becomes 3 damage.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad. Okay, so it looks like David is going to go ahead and force this exchange. He's going to minus Liliana, which would have Thoralf sacrificing the Ballista to that ability, but instead Thoralf's going to use up the counters there to ping down Renin 6 to 3. But again, David Mines is left with a Planeswalker on the battlefield, while Thoralf Severin has, well, nothing going on.
Yeah, but David no longer has that Liliana in play, and, you know, he's getting a land into play every turn, which is nice, but there's no pressure here. There's no creature, right?
Yes.
So now Thoralf just has several turns here to find, you know, and piece together Tron, and look at this. Now he's got a tower. All he needs is a mine, and then just a big threat, and boom. I mean, the game will likely just be over.
That's right. Was that a tireless tracker off the top?
That was a huge draw, yes. That was a tireless tracker off the top.
So that's going to force this Oblivion Stone.
Right.
But with a fetch land in play, David may be able to garner some value on the way out here. He can just say go. Oh, he's got a land in his hand too, so he can really force the issue. If Thoralf wanted to pop the O-Stone, then he could crack the fetch in response and have 4 lands plus 2 clues and just turn those into cards.
Right. And on top of that, Thoralf, if he did pop the stone, he wouldn't be able to draw a card, and his Relic of Progenitus would die too. So that also feels pretty bad.
Oof. Oh, and a Bloodbraid Elf in the
Okay.
hand for David. So things starting to heat up here for David Mines.
This is exactly what David needed.
And Thoralf is going to use a Relic. I wouldn't be surprised to see him just pop it here as well.
I could also see him put a Fate counter on the Relic of Progenitus and set up an Oblivion Stone activation next turn.
Oh, that is what he's doing.
Fate counter. Yeah, he can still try to play patiently, still sitting at 20 life, preserve that Relic of Progenitus.
Yeah, David is going to take advantage of the fact that Thoralf has now tapped down by cracking the fetch, getting a land onto the battlefield, and getting a clue that he can sacrifice in response to the Oblivion Stone. So that's a card that he's effectively locked up for sure,
right?
Kind of regardless of what Thoralf does. So, yeah, this one is slipping away from Thoralf Severin for sure.
Ooh, and that was a very interesting draw.
What was it, an Ancient Stirrings?
I believe that was an Ancient Stirring. So pretty likely to hit a land. And any land would allow him to sacrifice the Oblivion Stone there. If he finds Tron, of course, that would be ideal, because then at any Wormcoil Engine, any Ulamog, any of those cards will likely be able to help seal up the game for him.
Thoralf showing great patience this game. Will it pay off for him, or has he fallen too far behind the Planeswalkers from David Mines? Like you said, it was very much incremental value being gained by those Planeswalkers, but it has added up pretty significantly now. Just one tireless tracker kind of blew that wide open. It gave David something to do with all those extra lands that he got off of Renin 6.
He's tapping for, oh, maybe it wasn't an Ancient Stirrings. Oh, no, okay. He is just running it out now.
Okay, so he's going to crack the Oblivion Stone, but once again, there was a clue on the battlefield with 2 lands, so David's going to lock that up. Fate counter goes away.
And the reason why he's doing this is because he doesn't want David to run out an extra land next turn to give him that clue. That clue will come into play no matter what. And David will have the mana available to sacrifice that clue for more resources.
Yeah, he already decided to keep his Relic of Progenitus on the battlefield versus letting David have an extra clue. He kind of made an exchange of, I want my Relic more than I want you to have 1 extra card. But he said, okay, I can't just keep giving you cards forever. Right. And here's Bloodbraid Elf, the big hitter in the deck. David's shaved these down a fair bit, but he still has them, and it's Thoughtseize to take away the Stirrings.
Got the Ancient Stirrings, and now this is somewhat of a clock. I mean, it's still just 3 a turn, but it's something.
So down to 17 goes Thoralf, and now we're playing a real game here. Let's start peeling cards off the top of the library and see if we can hit not only Tron, but something to cast with it. Though, that being said, he is starting to get pretty – he's already up to 5 lands. He could just go, like, land into Wormcoil here.
Looking for some action here.
He found a –
okay.
All right.
We have Tron. Tron is online.
Sylvan Scrying is going to find him Urza's Mine. And how much mana does he have now? 3, 5, 7 –
he can
9,
Ulamog.
10, 11. Yeah, he does. He has enough for Ulamog next turn.
Yeah, so this is really big. The clock is ticking, and I actually think...
Oh, I must have seen it anyway.
Thoralf is in excellent position here. There's only a Bloodbraid Elf in play.
But he needs to find something. That was a relic, yeah.
He does, but he has multiple draws, and there's not enough pressure yet. David really needs to find a second threat here to really put pressure on Thoralf's life total.
Oh, man. Thoralf is going to have a couple of draw steps here to find some action, and he can cast anything in his deck.
Right, and this helps. I mean, this is a 3-turn clock, right? Thoralf is at 14, and we have 5 power on the board on David Mind's side of the board.
And you see the pressure
Here
now
we go.
on Thoralf.
We need to
He's
find
going to crack
something
the
big.
relic. Draw something. He's got a draw step as well.
Oh, and he has the blast zone, so it's actually not necessarily a 3-turn clock, because he can. Oh, and look at
he
this!
found Karn.
I mean, honestly, this is what Tron does. Once you have Tron, you have so many ways to cycle through your deck, and he found Karn.
He found Karn and Ancient Stirrings.
And Walking
there's
Ballista,
big
and Wormhole,
Ulamog,
and
the Ceaseless
Ulamog.
Hunger. He has all of it. Thoralf Severin has been patient, and it has really paid off, because now he just put Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, on the stack, and he says, you've got so many lands anyway, I just don't want to die. Exile your 2 creatures. Your move, it needs to be a Liliana, and now there's really nothing that David can do at this point. Boy, did that one swing away from him quickly. It was incremental advantage, incremental advantage, incremental advantage, and then it was like boom, boom, and the game's over.
Yeah, and for all you Gen players out there, you know this basically just happens every time. You're like, man, I really scrapped. I really felt like, I played a really good game. I really disrupted his game plan. I mean, we're in like turn 9. You didn't get Tron. I took all the threats out of your hand. I had Planeswalkers in play. And then you go, wait, what happened? Ulamog? What? And then now it's over.
Look at this. He even drew a Wormcoil engine. David Mines has to just smile, because remember, last turn he played Inquisition of Kozilek and saw Karn, and then Thoralf is like, Wormcoil, I guess. Wow, when it rains, it pours. That is absolutely incredible stuff. And Thoralf Severin is going to go up 2-0 over David Mines.
Yeah, and this is something that you would sort of expect. I think Tron is a heavy favorite. Game 1, the Jund deck has cards like Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt that just don't do a whole lot. Once you go into the sideboard, we actually saw David Mines win this matchup in the Swiss portion of the tournament, because he had a lot of additional disruption. But he's going to have to rally here. He's going to have to win 3 in a row. And what is this? Turn 1? Was
he went bobble. Opal, yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Turn 1 on the play, and he has 5 permanents on the battlefield. What in the world?
Is this a Black Cleave Cliffs go? All right, I see your 5 permanents.
Right.
And I'm going to play a land.
I'll play a land go.
Yeah.
The question is, can Lenz follow this up with something relevant? I mean, he's got cards to come from the Mishra's Baubles.
I mean, if he could potentially play a turn 2 Urza here. Yeah, and he's going to sack at least one of them. He wants to make sure he has 3 artifacts in play for the Metalcraft on the Mox Opal.
I think it's a Pithy Needle in hand, if I saw that correctly.
There's at least an Arkham's Astrolabe. It looks like...
Oh, yeah, maybe an Astrolabe. Okay.
All right, so he's got a lot of ways to cycle through here, and he has a Whir of Invention.
So it looks like his hand is, Whir, land, and double Astrolabe.
So the Whir, the one thing about the Whir in this deck is that it doesn't really get something that is completely backbreaking, at least in the Jund matchup, right? Like, sure, maybe you can get an Ensnaring Bridge. They'll probably find an answer for it at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just the combo piece is the only, backbreaker that you can grab, right?
Maybe if you get enough artifacts in play, you can fetch a Spine of Ish Saw.
Oh, I like that.
That's a lot of mana.
So once again, though, Manuel Lenz is just guess this is turn 2, and he is just dumping cards onto the battlefield. That said, he's a little out of gas here. He has Whir of Invention and a land in hand.
Yeah, but I mean, look at a lot of the cards a lot of the cards that he has in play. He's got the Spellbomb, the Bauble, and even the Mind Stone that he can crack to find additional cards. And then I think he wants to get this going. He wants to apply the pressure while he has such a huge mana and permanent advantage here. Good sequencing here from Manuel, looking at the top of his deck with Mishra's Bauble to see if it's a card that he wants, and it looks like he determines he did not want to draw the card on top and is now going to crack a fetch land. Likely also just going to fire off this Spellbomb too to draw a card. Really just wants, I mean, Urza. Urza is absolutely the best card in the deck. really just kind of what created this deck. It was like the inspiration for the creation of this deck. You know, we've seen variations of Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek. But the issue with that deck was, you know, oftentimes a piece of hand disruption here or there, it was just too easy to disrupt. But now, Urza just gives you that secondary win condition. All right.
Okay, card advantage engine online here for Zhang, but it's a slow process.
Does he have an Urza? No, it looks like it's just some lands.
As well as the whir.
Yeah, so he can whir for 4, it looks like. Not a lot of good targets. I'm looking through here. We have the Ensnaring Bridge. We have an Ichor Wellspring, and maybe he gets a Thopter Foundry to convert some of those artifacts in play into Thopters if he wants. It's not the worst to sacrifice some Arkhim's Astrolabes into 1/1s.
It really isn't. You know, that's the kind of card that when you see it, you try to think of the combo potential, but on its own, it's not the worst.
But, I mean, taking a look at Zhang's hand, wow. He's got a lot of action here. Multiple bolts, Maelstrom Pulse, very, very important card in this matchup, allowing him to potentially break apart the ThopterSword combination. Interestingly, Manuel could have looked to Word of Invention for 2, get a Thopter Foundry, make a Thopter to try to ambush Dark Confidant.
So the pressure building here for Zhang. He plays a Tarmogoyf. It's just 2 power right now, though.
Looks like he's just going to crack Mindstone, get a little more information. Still looking for Urza here.
Another land. Wow, he is flooding proper.
Right. There's not
Is he going
a lot of
Is he going to go
lands.
for the Ichor Wellspring? Does he just need cards at this point? Because he's got tons of lands in his hand.
Right.
All right, well, here's the whir. Let's see what Manuel decides to go for.
Well, it looks like, yeah, it's a whir for 2.
Yeah.
So we're going to see Thopter Foundry
Sure.
here. And, yeah, Sword of the Meek or another whir would allow him to piece together the combo here. Also
the slow version.
The slow version. Also, Goblin Engineer would get it done if the... because once Goblin Engineer puts Sword of the Meek into the graveyard, Manuel can then sacrifice an artifact, get that 1/1 in Thopter into play, and get the chain going. So Manuel putting himself in a very good position here, but he still needs to draw something.
That's right. Let's see if he can hit something right here.
Quick peek. It's just a bobble.
It is hope.
Yep.
It is a Mishra's Bauble. He's not dying next turn.
Right, but this is going to be rough because we saw in Zhang's hand he had a Maelstrom Pulse, and he's definitely likely to fire that off onto Thopter Foundry, making it even more difficult for Manuel. Because after that, he's going to need to find 2 pieces to look for that combo. Now Zhang deciding whether or not he wants to just fire off a lightning bolt here. He's lots of spells in hand with an active Dark Confidant.
But Manuel can buy himself a significant amount of time with the Thopter Foundry just as it sits. He can sack the Arkham's Astrolabes, maybe even the Mox Opal at this point. I don't know how important those extra artifacts are, given that he does have a decent amount of mana plus more lands in hand.
Right.
Well, he's going to see the bad news here. Inquisition you.
I think Zhang's okay with this.
Whammy. Yeah, bad news for Manuel.
Right.
It's good news for Zhang for sure.
And I think Zhang now is going to fire off the Maelstrom Pulse on the Thopter Foundry. Doesn't want to give Manuel the opportunity to top deck a way to get Sword of the Meek.
Right.
And then put Manuel to the test. How many of these artifacts on the board do you want to sacrifice? And, you know, decide how many Thopters you want. He can, of course, sack Thopter Foundry to itself. So we know at the very minimum, he'll get 1 Thopter.
That's right. Minimum 1. And then it depends on what he needs on the battlefield as far as just critical massive artifacts go. The Astrolabe's not doing a ton at this point.
And keep in mind,
he's got to be careful because if he loses those, then the Opal's probably got to go too. It's kind of a
right.
He could leave himself with no artifacts.
He could just make. I mean, to be fair, he could just make 4 Thopters here.
Mm-hmm.
And if he draws an Urza, he's still looking okay.
There's Maelstrom Pulse targeting Thopter Foundry. And as we described, now Manuel has some decisions to make.
Get some information here.
See what we're going to top deck. He does have a fetch land on the battlefield as well, so if he doesn't like what he sees, he can shuffle that away and hope to find something different.
Yeah, the real question here, how many Thopters? I think you want to make, if you just make one, if Zhang has a removal spell, then he can just attack with the Dark Confidant. So it might be in Manuel's best interest to make several Thopters here, and it looks like that's what he's going for. Yeah, 2 Thopters.
He's going to make 2. He did tap that Mox Opal, but that was at least currently the last time he'll be able to do so.
Well, actually, the...
Oh, the Thopters
right.
are artifacts. Sorry about that. Yep, so he does
blue
still have
artifacts.
That. Yeah, he actually has the right Thopters, too. Those are kind of tough to track down. And they're shiny. Jeez,
He came ready.
He did come prepared. Okay, now
Ooh, and he
kept
did
that
not
card
shuffle.
on top of the library, didn't he?
Is this an Urza? It must be an Urza, right?
Has to be something.
Could be a
along
Thopter
those lines.
Foundry.
Yeah, Thopter Foundry it could be. Just replace it.
What is it? Oh, it's a Teferi Time Raveler. Okay, that's additional cards.
Yeah, he probably figured that's just another way to slow down Zhang and get himself a card, so why not?
He can also bounce Arkham's Astrolabe, which would be 2 cards, right? He can.
Yeah.
So that could be something to consider here. Yeah, nice piece of tech here. We've seen this out of some of the Azorius and Esper control decks. It looks like he wants to just prevent Zhang from piecing together a bunch of cards.
There's a Ensnaring Bridge off the top. Now, with this kind of awkward flood he's had here, he's still got a work to do to get these cards out of his hand, but he can already start to threaten keeping that Tarmogoyf at bay.
Yeah, if he runs...
in fact, right away, if he wants to get rid of the Opal.
Exactly. Actually, if he just... I don't think he's played a land yet for the turn, so if he just plays a land, he can just run out the Ensnaring Bridge. And Tarmogoyf, given that it's at 4 power, even with Manuel with 3 cards in hand, Tarmogoyf will be unable to attack. And he can also get in there with the Thopters if he wants. Although he might want to be concerned about cards like Bloodbraid Elf, if his game plan is to just kind of get to the late game. And
He's not concerned. In go the Thopters ball.
I mean, that is the only card that he could play, that Zhang could play, that could attack here.
So Lenz doing his absolute best to slow down Zhang while he buys himself enough time to try to set up for his combo. 3 cards in hand. Zhang says, how many you got? Just the right amount.
And Zhang does have a Bloodbraid Elf here.
Well, he might make Lenz regret that attack. And there's Lightning Bolt to finish off Teferi.
And the reason why he has the Lightning Bolt first is with Teferi in play, you can't cast the spell off the Bloodbraid Elf.
Oh, that's right.
so you need to get it off the board first.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Cascade not friendly with Teferi Time Raveler. Here we go. Bloodbraid Elf into Liliana of the Veil. She doesn't look devastating here.
She's not especially good. I can see first an attack and then a tick up, right, because of the Ensnaring Bridge in play. So attack for 3 with the Bloodbraid Elf first, then you can tick it up. But then that also prevents you from maybe attacking. But, you know, of course, Manuel it's in his best interest to empty out his hand. So, yeah, this might be the only attack he gets in. He could choose to minus to get a Thopter off the board, but that doesn't seem great either.
Down to 9. Goes Lenz. Plus, and Manuel's just going to discard one of the lands in his hand. And he's going to get the turn pass back to him once again. So the search continues. Currently, kind of needs to find it all. And boy, he just keeps finding more lands.
Yeah, but the bridge is buying him some time here. The bridge is definitely buying him some time. Manuel can also pressure Liliana here Zhang, he can still attack with those Thopters, and Liliana is down to 2. And Zhang just can't attack anymore. So he has a lightning bolt, so he's got 4 lightning bolts in his deck, so he can find 2 more lightning bolts, or one of the ways for him to deal with artifacts. He also has Ren and 6, which can slowly start chipping away at Manuel's life total. But he does have Abrupt Decay and Kolaghan's Command in his deck as well.
Yeah, we see that Maelstrom Pulse in the graveyard. How many of those does he run?
Looks like he has 2. So he has 1 Maelstrom Pulse left, 1 Abrupt Decay, and 1 Kolaghan's Command as ways to kill the Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah, this could buy Manuel quite a bit of time. And he needs it. Because right now he's on empty. He's got Mox, Opal, and Snow-Covered Island in hand.
Manuel just,
Ooh, there we go. Goblin Engineer.
So that's interesting. That allows him to, put a Sword of the Meek in his graveyard if he wants. Of course, we know that Zhang has multiple removal spells, so that Goblin Engineer won't actually be able to be activated, as it has Summoning Sickness. You actually need it to survive for a turn before using that ability.
But as you said before, putting the Sword of the Meek in the yard is a fine place for it.
Yeah, definitely.
That effectively is a combo piece at the ready.
Yeah, that
Still
means
needs a Thopter and an Urza, though.
Right.
Thopter Foundry, that is.
But if he just finds a Thopter Foundry, that likely will just be good enough too.
Yeah, it's easy to overlook that particular combo. It effectively ends up being pay 1 mana, gain a life, make a 1/1 flyer.
Right.
And you can do that as much mana as you have every turn. And that's, against a deck like Jund is devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, he can also just kind of manipulate the Ensnaring Bridge, where he can attack every turn if he wants with the Thopters, but Zhang can't because his creatures are too large.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Manuel has two Thopter Foundries left in his deck. Urza would be a great draw as well. And of course, Word of Invention off the top would allow him to find that Thopter Foundry.
And well, assuming that his Goblin Engineer was going to die, and he was correct, it was Fatal Push to shove it off the edge and right into the graveyard.
Okay, alternate win condition.
Yeah.
Spotted here. Ren and 6 off the Dark Confidant. So Zhang can now use the Ren and 6 to pick off those Thopters. If he at some point finds a Horizon land or a Cycle land, I don't know if he's playing any Cycle lands. It looks like he only has a Nurturing Peatland, but if he does find it, he can then use Ren and 6 as a card advantage engine. Not just getting lands, but actual threats. So yeah, Zhang, has a lot of awesome cards in play, right? We have multiple Planeswalkers. He has ways to get cards, but Manuel is in a position where, he has so many strong top decks here. Urza would be great. He has so much mana that he can actually just slam Urza and use the 5-mana ability to look for additional cards. We saw that Zhang had a Lightning Bolt, but given that he has the Ren and 6, he can use the Ren and 6 plus Lightning Bolt to kill Urza on the following turn, so he does have some of the answers. But yeah, the card that Manuel really wants to find here is a Thopter Foundry.
Yeah, Thopter Foundry would blow this game open here for Manuel Lenz. He just needs to find it. War of Invention would find it.
Yep. And on the other side, Zhang really wants to find one of his few artifact removal effects in his deck that's left. That Kolaghan's Command, that Maelstrom Pulse, and the Abrupt Decay.
Zhang has assembled a 6/7 Tarmogoyf as well, which is quite impressive until you look at the Ensnaring Bridge, but still nice.
Yeah, Ensnaring Bridge is another one of the primary reasons to go with this strategy. I think a lot of people who brought this Thopter deck, they were like, look, Ensnaring Bridge is one of the single best cards against the Hogak deck, which was kind of public enemy #1 coming into this tournament, and they just don't have a lot of ways to kill Ensnaring Bridge if you get into play, at least in Game 1. So being able to have that as a strategy, Game 1 is extremely powerful if you expect that specific deck to be a large part of the metagame.
Liliana looks like she's perhaps going to survive if he wants to keep plussing. Now Manuel doesn't have enough pressure from the Thopters to keep her loyalty on a downward trajectory.
Yeah, it doesn't really need these lands, so.
Yeah. All right, another big draw step. Everyone counts here for Lenz. He really needs to try to find something to dig up a Thopter Foundry or just a Thopter Foundry. He has sort of the meek in his yard already. So that version of the combo is already assembled. You don't need to go infinite to win with this deck.
Right.
Though it's not the worst.
Right. Wonder what Manuel's considering. What to attack with the Thopter. It looks like he's going to go for the Renin 6. This way, if Zhang chooses to kill the Thopter, he will lose out on the Renin 6. And he also, of course, wants to play out all the cards in his hand, as there is an active Liliana on the battlefield. So,
and Lenz did that. It was another island.
So we got a whiff from both sides.
Yes.
Zhang with an Inquisition and a land.
And once again, it's a Raging Ravine.
Yeah, I mean,
not good.
This is close. I mean, Zhang looks like he has an overwhelming board. Ensnaring, but Manuel is hiding behind that Ensnaring Bridge. And Zhang really just wants to find an artifact removal spell. And Manuel really wants to top their Foundry.
That's right.
First person to find that is likely going to win here. But Zhang does have 2 cards a turn that he gets to look at, thanks to that Dark Confidant in play.
I guess Lenz does have an alternate win condition of Zhang not finding a way to get rid of a bridge, but also dying to his Dark Confidant. Renin 6 can take care of that, of course, if it becomes a major issue. So now this Thopter, wow, another land for Lenz. And he looks like a man who has drawn 4 or 5 lands in a row or whatever.
He had such an explosive start, but just couldn't find the payoff cards. Okay, Zhang not going to win this turn.
Nope, definitely not. That was a Tarmogoyf and a Renin 6, so he keeps finding action, but just not the thing he needs.
Yeah. Probably going to look to finish off this Thopter here with the Renin 6. Maybe run out more Tarmogoyfs.
So the last Thopter down now.
He could also now just run out the other Renin 6 in hand to tick it up, just to try to get closer to the emblem, because that is also an alternate win condition. If you get to the emblem, then you can start casting a bunch of lightning bolt in the graveyard with Retrace.
Oh, that's a great point, Paul. Yeah, lots of ways for Zhang to finish this thing off. It feels almost inevitable at this point, unless Manuel can get a little lucky here and chain together a combo piece or two. Even an Urza would be fine, but really finding that Thopter Foundry would be nice, because look at this board here for Zhang. Passing the turn back, not a land, not a land, not a land,
needs to find an action spell.
Oh,
ooh, we see some body. Ooh, okay, 3 islands. This is a word of invention, right?
Or an Urza.
Okay.
It's Urza.
Oh, it's Urza.
Urza, Lord High Artificer, hits the battlefield with Construct Friend. But unfortunately, let's see, does he have enough? He has 1. Oh, yeah, he has plenty of mana here to start activating it, too. 3, 4.
And a land here,
5.
5.
Can he hit it? This would be beautiful for Lenz after all of those misses. Land after land after land after land. If he can spike a Thopter Foundry, he could just win the game.
Right, he would just go infinite. And go infinite, by infinite, I mean he will be able to draw his entire deck, gain infinite life, and make infinite Thopters. So yes, go infinite.
Very infinite. All right, here we go.
And even if he doesn't, Zhang still doesn't have this game just yet.
All right, it's an Arcum's Astrolabe.
Okay,
that gives him another peel at it. Yeah.
It's a land.
It's hard to read Lenz. He's a pretty chill guy.
So let's see, does he have mana for another activation? He has 2 artifacts in play with the Construct, a Scalding Tarn, and an Island.
Yeah, he does then.
He does, but the question is, you know, how low does he want to go? Does he have another snow-covered basic to get here? Because he really doesn't want to go down to 6 here and get a shock, because that would put him in double bolt range.
It looks like he does.
Okay.
He has a snow-covered mountain. Man, they run a lot of basics in this deck.
Oh, yeah.
That's nice. All right, here we go. Another spin of the wheel. Let's see if he can hit.
You do need those snow-covered lands, though, because you need to be able to play those Arcum's Astrolabes on turn 1.
Mm-hmm. Really no downside to it, right?
What is it? Teferi Time Raveler.
Oh.
Okay.
That is not the card he wanted, but it's not bad. He's going to cast it.
He's probably bouncing something.
Right.
Getting a card. If he bounces Mox Opal, he can replay it and have a mana sword. Okay, it looks okay.
He's just going to deny his opponent a card. This does leave him with 2 cards in hand. No, make it 1. One of them was a land.
Yeah, and this is nice because, yeah, Zhang gets 1 less draw at finding an artifact removal spell. What does he find?
He finds another land as well. Man, both players really thinking of very specific cards for the past 5 or 6 turns and neither able to find them until now. Manuel Lenz with Urza.
But Zhang will be able to kill the Urza here. He's going to minus the Liliana. Manuel is going to sacrifice the Construct. Then he can minus on the Ren and 6, deal 1 damage to Urza, and then cast Lightning Bolt. Actually, I guess he doesn't even need to minus the Liliana here. He doesn't really care about the Construct.
He can't attack.
Yeah, does he just want to get that last card out of Manuel's hand?
He did end up using effectively all of his mana. Although, of course, he did have it in his hand when he had access to mana, so Zhang probably understands, well, this isn't a, a key combo piece here, but right. I don't know. The Construct just isn't really doing anything at the moment either way. So he's just going to run this out.
Looks like he's probably just picking it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
all right.
Oh, it was Spine of Ishsaw. The reason he couldn't cast it was because he didn't have enough mana. Wow. All right, but another draw step here. That was a Mind Stone.
Okay. I mean, so that's another card to find. But yes, Spine would have been reasonable to just hard cast against Dark Confidant. All right. Definitely going to be sacking it here. Really needs a Thopter Foundry.
Gotta find it. There's got to be one in the list in the deck somewhere.
It looked like a red card, but
that wouldn't be the worst either.
How many red cards does he
No,
have?
it's actually 2 mana.
Goblin Engineer.
Yeah.
What does he want? Like another Sword of the Meek?
He does have another. I guess maybe some redundancy there. He could also
just put a card in his graveyard that he doesn't want to draw.
Exactly. Now, so Zhang is out of cards. Does he have the ability to kill the engineer just as it sits? No, right?
Currently,
it's a 1/2, so he could minus.
Currently, he does not. You're correct. There is that construct that's in play.
Maybe get that spine going. Maybe there's some stuff that he can do here with this engineer if it survives, and currently it will. Though, again, Dark Confidant.
Yeah, he needs to find a removal spell.
Yeah, and he finds another land. And another Dark Confidant.
Okay.
He just can't hit either. Wow, what is going on here?
So now Zhang can minus the Liliana, but Manuel can just sacrifice the construct. And next turn, Manuel can use the Goblin Engineer to put Thopter Foundry into play and start generating a ton of Thopters.
Finally, something is going to break through for one of these players. Especially if you're sitting in Zhang's seat, who's had Dark Confidant on the battlefield for most of the game.
I mean, both players have gone through like half their deck at this point.
Look at that graveyard. And by the way, you were right, Paul. He put the Grafdigger's Cage in his yard because, it's just another brick.
Right.
Smart.
Yeah, I mean, sacrifice the construct and... I mean, so many removal spells in Zhang's deck, but he was unable to find one. I mean, we can look back at, it's really hard to be able to map this out, but a few turns ago where he played out the second Ren in 6 so that he can get closer to embleming. Had he kept this Ren in 6 in hand, he could have minused, then played out the other Ren to kill off this Goblin Engineer.
Yeah.
Not the most intuitive thing, not something that you would think about, because his game plan was to try to get to that emblem as soon as possible. But, I mean, given how the game played out, Zhang might be regretting running out that Ren in 6. Wow. I mean, I don't even know if Zhang has an answer at this point, right? Like, how is he's got a second Maelstrom Pulse, but as long as Manuel keeps up a mana to fizzle the Maelstrom Pulse, Zhang won't be able to kill all the Thopters that Manuel generates here. And I mean, the entire game, I mean, this ensnaring bridge.
Wow, yeah, that has been the all-star for
Right.
sure.
Bought Manuel so much time because Zhang fired off that Maelstrom Pulse earlier to prevent the ThopterSword combo. All right, we got the untap and we have the Goblin Engineer. It's time for the fireworks.
That's right. First things first, we'll plus Teferi.
Wow, look at this, just in case. We got a Galvanic Blast here with Metalcraft, and Zhang is at 9 with 2 Dark Confidants in play.
Hey.
I mean, it's very plausible for Zhang to just take 5 damage here off his Dark Confidants.
Absolutely. But that's something that Manuel gets to just sort of free roll. He can just see if that's the case, right?
Exactly.
Manuel now going into the tank.
Yeah, just doesn't want to mess it up. Of course, he's been assembling this combo all throughout the weekend, but we are in the top 8 here.
It looks like he's actually considering casting the Galvanic Blast right now.
I see. Oh, he wants to just do it at instant speed.
Sure.
Okay.
And he's going to deny Zhang a card by killing a Dark Confidant. There was 3.
Yep.
What was the other card? I
We'll
have to know.
We'll see it. We'll see it.
Let's see what Zhang draws. No, it was
Land.
a land. So.
Yeah, and that's going to do it here. Manuel's going to be able to generate, how much mana do we have here? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He has 10 mana. So 1 mana from the Goblin Engineer, and then he will be able to generate 9 tokens here.
He'll gain 9 life.
And gain 9 life, and he won't be able to attack with the Thopter with the sword on it, because he will have 1 card in hand next turn, but he'll still be able to get in for a lethal attack.
Lenz probably considering, yeah, here we go. So he's going to sacrifice Arkham's Astrolabe to get back the Thopter Foundry in response to Liliana's minus ability, which will take down that Goblin.
And you get to see the combo in action here.
So this is where Sword of the Meat gets to come in for free.
Right. That's it, and Zhang sees it and just concedes.
Wow.
What a game.
Manuel Lenz works his way through after drawing land after land after land after land and somehow dodges the bullet there. Zhiyang Zhang sitting there drawing lands himself with Dark Confidant on the battlefield. He's supposed to find an answer. Now, the key there, of course, was that Manuel put him in a position where he needed a very small subset of the answers that he had. Because we saw, it's not like Zhang ran out of gas. He had Ren and 6. He had, a bunch of creatures on the battlefield, multiple planeswalkers. He was casting lightning bolts. It wasn't that he wasn't drawing spells. He just needed to draw very specific spells, and he didn't.
Yeah, it was at a point in the game where drawing creatures didn't really do anything anymore, right, because of that ensnaring bridge. The things that he was looking for were just a few specific cards in his deck, right? The 3 artifact destruction spells that he still had to deal with the ensnaring bridge, along with, some of the burn spells, maybe stringing together some lightning bolts. And yeah, I mean, he lost that game because of the Goblin Engineer. Again, going back a few turns where he played out that second copy of Ren and 6. You can sequence it. If you kept the first one in play, you could go Ren, minus, play the second Ren, minus again, and that would have killed Goblin Engineer.
We'll get this graphic updated for you shortly. But we're back on Thoralf Severin versus David Mines. There we go, with Thoralf up 2-0, looking to do it the easy way here, close things out in a quick 3-0 sweep.
Where are the lands? Oh, there. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. But David now gets one of the big advantages that Jund has. The sideboards are in effect now, Paul. And, when you're Jund, you can really transform your deck to your matchup in a way that most decks can't, and certainly Tron cannot.
Yeah, definitely. And David has specific cards. He's aware of this Tron deck and how bad the matchup is. He does have a pair of Fulminator Mages in the sideboard along with a Ghost Quarter. You know, historically, you've seen people just play the Fulminator Mages, but now with the addition of Wrenn and 6 to the fray, you can just, if you just draw Ghost Quarter plus Wrenn and 6, you can just keep your opponent off of Tron for the entire game.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you what, from what I've seen, David has a pretty significant sideboard for this matchup. He has Fulminator Mages that he can use to keep the opponent off balance, and then, as we've seen before as well, if he gets there, he can kind of snipe you with the surgical extraction that he's got a couple of.
He's also got a pair of Collector Roofs, which are also very strong in the matchup because it shuts off. You know, this is a card that only kind of the Abzan mid-range decks had access to in Stony Silence, but now you have it in the form of a creature. And the really important part, too, is that you're providing pressure at the same time. We saw in the previous games where David had all kinds of disruption, but just wasn't able to muster up enough of an attack force to be able to take the game down. Now you have a creature that shuts off the star, shuts off the expedition maps.
What did we decide to call it again? Oof or oof? Oof?
I'm on the oof wagon.
Team oof? All right, I'll join you. I'm with you, Paul. Where Paul goes, I go. Collector oof.
Big oof.
Oof. Okay, well, Thoughtseize taking some stuff away here from Severin, but looks like he can still sort of move his game plan forward. He finds a land and a map. Okay. Things are happening.
A lot of redundancy in Thoralf's hand. He had a hand with double Expedition Map plus Sylvan Scrying.
Mm-hmm.
However, David also with a redundant hand with multiple hand disruption spells to strip some of those search effects along with Fulminator Mage.
And we can see once again that Severin is using Relic of Progenitus. And you could tell how much he valued that card in game number 2,
Definitely.
which he won. And, you know, we'll see if that happens here. But there's Fulminator Mage, and there goes Urza's Mine. So down to just one land left here for Severin. He keeps using that Relic. Oof.
Yeah, and Thoralf is pretty far away here from Tron. David did need to find another threat, and he did find them here. He has Scavenging Ooze and Tarmogoyf.
Well, one of those is going to die. Severin has Dismember in hand.
Right, and also Relic of Progenitus will do a good job of just kind of making that Tarmogoyf pretty irrelevant unless David finds more spells to put into his graveyard.
Yeah, that said, there are 7 cards in the yard currently. they do fill up pretty quickly. So yeah, now, first things first, Expedition Map.
Yeah, but you know what? Thoralf's actually just going to be able to kind of make it so David's not going to get a good attack force here, right? Because he can technically go Dismember Scavenging Ooze, then sacrifice Relic of Progenitus, and we're just going to be looking at a 0-1 Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, I was going to say easy there, but he just put it on the battlefield. That's not quite what Map
that would be
does.
pretty strong.
Yeah. I mean, he is going to play it most likely, but first things first. Draw step. Oh, hello.
Wow.
That's a power plant. He got a mine. So
he knew.
He's 2/3 of the way. He's 2/3 of the way.
Can also just run it out. There's not a ton of pressure. I mean, he's at 20 life here. Doesn't have to just kill all of the creatures just yet. Yep.
And there's another Expedition Map.
Yeah, so now he's like kind of weighing out his options here. Does he still want to just clear out the board here? That does leave his Expedition Map vulnerable to an artifact removal spell. It looks like that's what he's going for here.
He ran a Chromatic Sphere off of that, but he's just going to pass the turn back, ostensibly with the ability to use Dismember.
Yeah, and David pretty much just has a Grizzly Bear in play with Scavenging Ooze, just only able to attack in for 2.
Thoralf is like, I don't even need to use this Dismember. I'll just take the 2.
I'm okay with the 10-turn clock.
No kidding. Wow, and there we go. Some more action for later in the game.
We're going to have Tron next turn.
That's right. So things shaping up very nicely here for Thoralf Severin.
And look at the redundancy, right? David went Inquisition, Thoughtseize, Fulminator Mage, and Thoralf still found Tron like on turn 5 or 6.
It's a very good draw here from David Mines. Disruption plus pressure but Thoralf Severin has found his way through it. A lightning bolt off the top. Doesn't look like it's going to do a ton here. In fact, he's not even going to bother with it.
Yeah, he could have considered lightning bolting Thoralf to get in for an additional point of damage with the Tarmogoyf.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, this is just going to be the game pretty much. I mean, Thoralf's at 18 life.
And he can play that Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
Right. Just Ugin
-2.
Ugin -2.
Your move.
Yeah, and then David just doesn't have a card in his deck that can come back from that.
No, his best case scenario is a Bloodbraid Elf into a Bolt or something.
Maelstrom Pulse,
to
maybe?
Kill it. Yeah, but that's not the end of the story, right? That's the problem. It's not like if that happens, then he wins. That just means he's dealt with the first threat from Severin. And remember, Ugin's going to have 5 loyalty here too. So
this is
pass a
rough.
turn back, and Thoralf Severin is just smashing through the quarterfinals here. He is well on his way to a quick 3-0 victory over David Mines from Australia.
I mean, you know what? I'm
Wow.
not going to lie. I used to be a Jund player, and Tron is the reason why I stopped playing
It's
Jund.
so miserable. Blast Zone off the top, but here is Ancient Stirrings, and there's a Worm Coil engine, which will effectively seal the deal. David Mines can simply not keep up with this pace of power. It's just too much. Ugin the Spirit Dragon pluses, goes upstairs, knocks David down to 9 life. And there's Worm Coil engine plus Blast Zone. This one's done, Paul.
This is over.
We are done here. David Mines can simply not keep up with the board state that Thoralf Severin has put on the battlefield. Incredible stuff from the Tron deck, doing what it's always done.
Surgical. Could have used that maybe earlier. But yeah,
And
that's
there we
it.
have our winner. Thoralf Severin advances to the semifinals. Again, a quick 3-0 victory there over David Mines. When we first came in to watch the match, you outlined, Paul, how tough of a matchup it can be for Jund, and we got to see that firsthand here. He couldn't even win a game.
Yeah. And Thoralf, too, just keeping 7-card hands. You know, we've seen over the course of, since London, with the London Mulligan, the Tron decks, you know, often actively mulliganing to try to find the Tron piece. But Thoralf didn't need any of that, which meant that he was just able to fight through hand disruption even more because he had so much redundancy in his hand.
That's right. That brings us down to our other quarterfinal. Now, I will remind you, just to set the stage here, we are watching 2 of the 4 quarterfinals right now, but there's 2 more coming to you in the next batch here. We'll have Riley and Eduardo to bring those for you. And then, of course, we'll move on to semifinal, which we do by itself, and then the other semifinal by itself, and then we'll bring you the finals later on a Sunday before we hand out a trophy and the big bucks up top.
Oh, yeah.
For now, though, we're kind of easing our way into the day here. We had a really excellent game between these 2 players where it just seemed like neither could find what they needed turn after turn after turn. The entire game hinging on Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah.
That was the only card that mattered for like a 7-turn stretch in the middle of the game, as no player could find one that interacted with it if you're sitting in jank seat, or that could put him over the top on the other side for Manuel Lenz.
Oh, man. One card that I didn't even bring up over the course of that match because Zhang just didn't draw was Scavenging Ooze. He could have drawn Scavenging Ooze to break apart the combo as well in that previous game.
To gobble up the sword.
Yeah, but you know, Zhang has pretty nice sideboard here because the thing with, you know, he's got Plague Engineers, which just kind of prevents you from comboing off there. There's so many different options here, though. There's also Leyline of the Void. Creatures do not enter the graveyard, so it doesn't trigger. There's also Collector Roof and Ancient Grudge. And Manuel with another fast start here.
Pretty quick,
Yeah.
I mean, he had 5 permanents last turn, so this is not, or last game, this isn't quite up to his speed, but, you know, not bad.
Maybe he has
bad.
more action this time, though. But yeah, anytime you are playing a Mox Opal deck, I think just your win percentage massively increases when you draw that in your opener. Although slightly awkward hand here for Manuel. As you can see, he has a pair of Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek, Galvanic Blast, and Urza, but that he doesn't have Metalcraft yet or land number 2. So he won't actually be able to do anything unless he can find a second land or an artifact to turn on that Mox Opal.
So now he's flooded with combo pieces?
just too much.
Yeah. Ooh, there's a land off the top of the
okay.
library there
Easy.
for Lenz. Yeah. He's facing down a Tarmogoyf, though. It's not particularly imposing at this point. Just 1 power. I'll remind you again, we are in sideboarded games now for this match. And again, the same thing goes from Zhang's perspective. He's the one with the, truly flexible sideboard options. He's playing 3 colors. His deck has a lot of cards that he'd like to take out anyway that he can just strictly improve. Where when you're the combo player sitting in Manuel Lenz's seat, there's only precious few slots that you can actually bother taking out.
Yeah, I mean, sideboarded games is where these mid-range decks really shine. They have a highly customizable deck. You can all of a sudden you have cards in the sideboard that are relevant, important cards, and you can board out all your removals. So, those lightning bolts, those fatal pushes, you might see some of those get sideboarded out. Fatal push actually a reasonable card. If you keep up a fetch land, you can sack it to kill the Urza. But certainly a card like lightning bolt doesn't do a whole lot. Lots of great options here in the sideboard. Whereas for Manuel, he's probably going to try to, take out maybe some of those silver bullets that aren't as effective in this matchup and replace them with, alternate win conditions where he doesn't have to rely so heavily on the combo. So, he has an extra copy of Psy Master ThopterSword in the sideboard, along with Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas.
He's going to use that Galvanic Blast to take care of the Tarmogoyf while the Gitten was good. That window closes pretty quickly, and he needed all of it. So Tarmogoyf down, no pressure on Manuel Lenz's life total currently.
And Zhang has 2 3-mana artifact removal spells this time around. That's a Kolaghan's Command along with a Maelstrom Pulse, and he's just deciding which one probably to fire off here to get that Thopter Foundry off the battlefield. Nice position here, too, because Manuel doesn't have the mana to sacrifice Thopter Foundry to itself to make a Thopter. But Kolaghan's Command is pretty tempting, getting Thopter Foundry off the battlefield and also making your opponent discard a card. Of course, there's always the risk that they just have a Sword of the Meek in their hand, but there's only 1 to 2 copies of that in most people's decks, so
you take your chances.
Usually you're going to get a relevant card.
Let's see if he goes for it. He has Pulse or Command if he'd like. That would set up nicely next turn for that Bloodbraid Elf. No, looks like he wants Scavenging Ooze.
Okay. Well, Scavenging Ooze does prevent the combo.
It does.
So maybe he's running that out and not too concerned here.
Wow, there's a Goblin Engineer into hand. And once again, Manuel Lenz's hand is quite stacked. He's got another copy of Thopter Foundry.
Man, Goblin Engineer is quite poor against Kolaghan's Command, because if he does run it out, Zhang can play out Kolaghan's Command to kill Thopter Foundry and deal 2 damage to the Engineer.
Lens is just going to sit back for now.
Looks like he wants to put some pressure here and exile Tarmogoyf. Grow the ooze. And Manuel playing patiently here.
He really is. Zhang now, though, will have land number 4 plus Bloodbraid Elf if he'd like to just start slamming.
Yeah, it's weird because he might actually be scared of something. Something feels up, right? Your opponent has 3 mana in play and just passed with 3 cards in hand. This kind of smells like a War of Invention. So if you think your opponent's going to go War of Invention end of turn, then you probably want to keep up the Kolaghan's Command. Alternatively, you can just maybe fire out the Maelstrom Pulse to have a more proactive plan. But the thing is, even if your opponent does nothing, you can still respond at some point by casting a Kolaghan's Command.
Yeah, and it looks like Zhang's just going to attack for 3 and stay patient here.
And I mean, Manuel probably has to do something here. I mean, it feels like just passing and doing nothing is pretty poor. So here it is.
There it is. War of Invention goes on the stack. Zhang says, sure, you got it. For 2, yeah.
I wonder if he's just going to get something like a Wellspring for value.
Similar.
Okay.
Yeah, he's going to go kind of in the middle and get a Mind Stone. That gives him a mana source or a source of a card a little later.
Yeah, and Mind Stone is especially nice here because Manuel does have Urza in hand.
Wow, that is really nice. It also does give him an extra mana here that he can use on the for the Foundry or something, just in case Zhang targets that on end step still. Yeah, nice. Taking the middle ground here.
And Manuel relying more on the Urza here because that is much harder to disrupt at instant speed. Not a whole lot of instant speed ways to kill Urza. Taking a look at Zhang's list, he actually doesn't play Assassin's Trophy, which would be an instant speed way to kill the 4 toughness legend. Abrupt Decay doesn't do it. Kolaghan's Command doesn't do it. And Maelstrom Pulse is a sorcery speed removal spell. He needs to have exactly one of the 2 fatal pushes he has with the fetch land. All right, looks like it's Urza time. Or not. Teferi time.
All right, Teferi o'clock.
Okay.
This looks really nice too.
Yeah, absolutely, because he can just bounce that Scavenging Ooze, buy him some
Zhang
time.
on nothing.
And now Zhang probably just needs to fire off this Kolaghan's Command here just to maximize on his mana. He can use Kolaghan's Command to kill the Thopter Foundry and also make Manuel discard a card, likely what he's going to go for. And then he's got a Bloodbraid Elf, however, that's going to just not be able to cast a spell. But he has to play something here.
Can he use it to kill Teferi? It is any target now, right?
Well, this is in response to Teferi.
Oh, he's doing it with it on the stack.
Because he can't cast Kolaghan's Command once Teferi resolves.
Right, of course. So he has to do it right now.
Right.
Well, this really does force the issue then, and Zhang is going to respond.
And yeah, I mean, we're probably gonna see a Teferi bounce. And yeah, this puts, I mean, Zhang's in trouble here, right? He's gonna get this nice tempo play of being able to bounce Scavenging Ooze, and Zhang with that Bloodbraid Elf in hand, not going to be able to cast the spell off the Cascade, and Manuel can even protect the Teferi if he wants, because he has that Thopter to chump block.
Scavenging Ooze goes back to hand thanks to Teferi Time Raveler, and the turn gets passed. Nicely done there by Manuel Lenz. Little edges coming in. He got the extra Thopter out of the deal. He didn't just jam, just go for it and get blown out here. Same thing with Zhang, right? He saw the writing on the wall. He knew it was up. He could have just cast a Bloodbraid Elf last turn.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Teferi, at least in this matchup, right?
Yeah. Helps protect your combo, buys you a bunch of time, gets you deeper into your deck.
Good against Bloodbraid Elf.
Maybe Teferi's good.
Maybe. Haven't seen it in play a lot, so, you know.
That is actually true, though. At least in Modern.
Right.
All right, so back to Zhang.
Couple options here. Can just maybe run out a Bloodbraid Elf as a 4-mana 3/3 haste, or just play out Scavenging Ooze and make it so that Manuel cannot assemble the ThopterSword combo. He can also just run out Maelstrom Pulse to kill Teferi, but that doesn't feel especially great, given that he can just start pressuring it. And Teferi doesn't do a whole lot unless it gets back up to 3 to get you some value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he certainly has time.
But now he knows that Zhang at least can't interact with him at instant speed. It's his turn. He's got Teferi. Teferi has that static ability. Players cannot play spells. They can only play spells as sorceries.
And by players, you mean opponents.
Opponents, rather.
It's so brutal.
Yeah. only you can play
hey,
Magic.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You got the green light.
Oh, and look at this. He even finds Fatal Push here to kill Scavenging Ooze.
Wow.
So now he gets additional protection to be able to try to get his combo together of Thopter plus Sword of the Meek. Of course, he needs to find the Thopter Foundry.
times 4 on the battlefield now.
Well, that's just an extra mana source for that Urza that he has in hand.
Plus Teferi. And he's just going to pass the turn back.
Yeah, I mean, what does he have? He has 4 mana to cast the Urza. Then he's going to have he can tap all those Astrolabes for mana and activate the Urza the turn he plays it.
Well, that's kind of silly.
Yeah, not bad.
Scavenging Ooze eats the Goblin Engineer. The Peatland gets sacrificed as well. And now we're back on Zhang's turn. And he is facing down a lot of permanents. And Manuel Lenz at a cool 17 life, looking just fine, thank you very much. Thopter is going to protect Teferi Time Raveler here from the Scavenging Ooze by jumping in front as a chump block.
Yeah, Manuel being very patient here with that Fatal Push. Has it in hand, but still waiting. Going to see what else Zhiyang puts out onto the battlefield. And maybe now is the time to fire off the Fatal Push here.
Yeah, it looks like that's exactly what he's going to do. So down goes Scavenging Ooze, a card that can not only become quite large, even bigger than a Tarmogoyf, but also can disrupt the combo.
Probably just exiling the Thopter Foundry. None of the other cards in graveyard really matter,
right?
As Manuel doesn't really have ways to recur those cards.
Yeah, he does have ways to recur the Foundry, as we saw in the last game.
Right, Goblin
so
Engineer.
Smart there for Zhiyang to get rid of it.
Yeah, but now we get the untap, and we have an Urza that he's likely going to be... Oh, actually, no. Yeah, he has everything, doesn't he?
Yes.
All right. Infinite life.
Here we go.
Infinite tokens.
There's a construct.
This is going to be the game.
And Zhiyang only can look on. Teferi Time Raveler is protecting all of these interactions. And
that's
boom,
it. We have
there
it all.
is. The ThopterSword and Urza combo.
With Teferi in play.
With Teferi means that is a done deal. Game
wow.
number 3 goes to Manuel Lenz as he does it the easy way, the hard way. I don't know how to describe it.
The patient way, because
yes.
he didn't just slam the Urza. He had that Urza for a long portion of the game, but he just developed his mana slowly. End of turn, War of Invention for Mind Stone, and basically was able to combo off all in one turn. And you saw just how important that Teferi was over the course of that game.
Yeah, super important to setting up exactly what he needed to do. And then at the right moment, it was all fireworks. He was just like, this, you're dead.
And, you know, just the takeaway from that game, if you are a player that's interested in playing this deck, is
that's me, by the way.
Yeah, don't just jam. You know what I mean? It's you got to play patient, know what your opponents can do to interact with you, and then play accordingly.
That's right. We can take a look at the sideboards, by the way. We are in the sideboarded games for these rounds. Manuel Lenz, again, when you look at the sideboards for these combo decks, they usually only have a couple of, we call them flex slots, a couple of spots that they can remove or put in new cards. We saw the Fatal Push. That's, I guess, one of them.
Yeah, Fatal Push is really, really important because it's important for Manuel to have answers for Scavenging Ooze, because Scavenging Ooze single-handedly breaks apart the combo. So some combination of Fatal Push in conjunction with the Galvanic Blast and the Teferi Time Raveler allows Manuel to have enough outs to kill the Scavenging Ooze.
Let's take a look at what Zhiyang is up to, because this is where the real sideboarding can happen. As you mentioned at the beginning of that game, Paul, Jund has a very configurable style. You can really change around what this deck's doing, becoming more aggressive or more controlling as it sees fit.
Yeah, really curious to see just how many of these sideboard cards Zhiyang brought in, because a lot of them are defensible. You can even bring in Spellbomb because it, you know, cycles and the games go kind of long. So, you know, every now and then you just want to be able to pop that off to exile the graveyard. You have Plague Engineer to name Thopters. You have Ancient Grudge, which is of course going to be brought in this matchup, and Collector Roof, which also stops things. Leyline of the Void is even a consideration.
It is.
Because if you have it in play, there's not a whole lot that the Thopter deck can do to get rid of that Leyline of the Void outside of the 2 Teferi Time Ravelers that they have.
Does break up the combo. Yeah, you know, the big question, of course, Paul, when we look at sideboards like this, isn't even necessarily what cards do we want to bring in, it's what can we bring out. Right? And typically in a mid-range deck like Jund, there'll actually be cards that are really bad.
Yep.
Right, that you really would just much rather not have in your deck. In which case, you know, you're turning powerful sideboard cards into just strict upgrades over cards that you don't want in the main. Now, that is a downside, right? When you sit down to play game 1, most matchups will feature cards in your hand that you wish really weren't there. But in games 2 and if necessary 3, or in this case 3, 4, and 5,
right.
You know, that those are huge upgrades and you can give yourself a big advantage.
Yeah, but the thing about this matchup is it feels like all of your cards have some value somewhere. You can still use Lightning Bolt to kill Goblin Engineer. Hand Disruption is of course very strong. You want to put pressure, so you want your creatures. So everything seems like they have some function. Mm-hmm. You know, of course you're going to keep your ways to kill in artifacts, but you know, how many of your threats do you want to keep in? Because you have look at the board here. You have so many different things you can bring in this matchup.
Could you bring in Plague Engineer?
Plague Engineer seems strong. I mean,
name Thopter.
Plague Engineer naming Thopter is quite strong. Or
Construct, or what is it? I don't even know what a...
Construct is, the only Construct is the thing.
No, are
token.
Thopters just Thopters?
I'm not sure. I know for sure it's a Thopter.
They're just Thopters, all right. Yeah, so you could, of course, name that as well. Players are just getting ready. We're in the first quarterfinal match, or excuse me, the first 2 quarterfinal matches of the day here. We've got Manuel Lenz versus Zhiyang Zhang sitting down in the feature match here. If you're just joining us, don't worry, lots of magic to bring you throughout the course of the day. Thoralf Severin, though, has made it a little less magic to watch. He was a quick 3-0 victory over David Mines from Australia. David was playing Jund and could not keep up with Tron from Thoralf. So Thoralf is our first semifinalist. He will go grab a bite to eat and some hangouts because we've got this quarterfinal to finish, and then the other 2 are coming up after this as well. And then we'll get into the semis. Let's see what's happening here as far as the opening hand goes. Oh, he's got a bunch of German cards in there. I like that.
Yeah, much slower start this time around. No Mox Opal, no Astrolabes. So, you know, when you have hands like that, I actually think I like the side of the Jund player because, you know, the one thing that Jund has difficulty is against opponents who put a bunch of permanents onto the battlefield in play, because the Jund deck's really good at kind of one-for-one-ing, right? It's like, I have my 1-mana removal spell to kill your thing. I have my hand disruption spell to kill your one thing. But if you go land, Mox, Astrolabe, Bobble, those are the games that are difficult to win.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen from Lenz thus far. This hand, though, as we mentioned, not so much. Right. 2 2-drops, or excuse me, a 2-drop and 2 3-drops. And 4 lands to kick things off.
They are nice value cards, though. I mean, we saw what Teferi did earlier, and Sai is actually quite strong in this matchup, and if Zhang doesn't have enough ways to kill it, that's the card that I would probably be looking to get.
Yeah, there's a Mox Opal, one of the unsung heroes of a deck like this. You just sort of get used to seeing it, but the fact that Mox Opal is a card that, generally speaking, acts as a Mox, you know, on turn 2-ish, super powerful. It's just like we forget.
It's almost forgotten. At least, you know, the whole, you know, storyline for this tournament, you know, the dominance of the Hogyak, that people really focusing on a lot of the new cards. But, you know, there's a long period of time where people discussed, we're talking about Mox Opal being one of the strongest cards in the modern format.
And it probably still is.
And it still is.
Yeah.
And Manuel is showing why. Turn 1, Inquisition. Turn 2, Dark Confidant. We've seen this one before.
Yeah, that's a nice little 1-2 punch here, and it is going to put some pressure on Lenz right away to get things rolling. Another land off the top. Not really what he wanted to see there.
I wonder if Manuel's just going to run out the Thopter Foundry.
No, he's going to stay patient once again and just pass a turn back. Not sure what his plan is. He can't cast anything at the moment.
Very strong here. Inquisition definitely looking to nab either the Thopter Foundry or Teferi.
Or the Opal. There's Inquisition. Yeah, he can have his way. Any of the 3, they're all viable.
Okay, so he's taking the Teferi. I could also see an argument to take the Thopter Foundry, because even if he plays Teferi, given that he has a Scavenging Ooze in hand, he's going to have 2 threats on the battlefield. If Manuel runs out Teferi and bounces one of the creatures, he can still just kill Teferi. Or if he runs out Teferi and ticks it up, it only goes up to 4 loyalty. So
there's Watery Grave untapped. This is going to allow Fatal Push to kill Dark Confidant and stem the bleeding pretty significantly there as far as card advantage goes, and even some damage. So not a bad draw there for Lenz.
And Zhang has a Bloodbraid Elf. If he draws land number 4, he's going to be able to put a lot of pressure here.
Bingo, baby.
He
hit it.
Find it. All right, so we're going to see Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah, what is Bloodbraid going to hit?
Well, Manuel is hoping for maybe a lightning bolt. I don't know. That would be like the least painful thing.
Best case. Oof, that's tough.
Maybe if he kept in Fatal Push, that would have no targets, but decent chance he sideboarded some of those out. Although it is one of his few ways to actually kill Urza.
could hit the other pulse.
Abrupt decay. Oh,
Plague
not
Engineer.
that one though. That one.
That one's fine.
Yeah, he's happy with that one. You think he's going to name Construct?
No, I do not.
Okay, all right.
Names Thopter, we're assuming, and then he gets to slam in for 5. And this one is going very well for Zhiyang Zhang. An Arkham's Astrolabe off the top. Draws him a card. Okay, now he's finally starting to see the cheaper cantrip-style artifacts that he was hoping to have in his opener.
Yeah, but this is a lot of pressure from Zhang. This is a 2-turn clock. Manuel does not have the ability to be patient anymore.
Yeah.
He needs to start deploying the cards in his hand.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he's going to do.
Yeah.
All at once. And he's going to pass the turn back. So he does have an active Thopter Foundry here that he can start using to chew up his own board state.
Wow.
Whoa, hello. Kolaghan's command off the top of the library there for Zhang.
Right, and yeah, again, Thopter Foundry not going to do anything here with Plague Engineer in play. Zhang can freely just attack for 7 here.
Yeah,
and Kolaghan's command a Lightning Bolt in hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. He actually has lethal if he'd like it. He's going to force Manuel to start making some Thopters and chump blocking here.
But he can't. There's a Plague Engineer
oh, yeah,
on top,
so it's game. It's just over then.
He can sack artifacts to gain life. That's what he can do.
Well, maybe that actually does keep him alive.
Right.
But at any rate, this game is effectively over. Zhang has wins in hand.
Maybe just get a little extra information here.
Yeah, that's probably where we're at here. He gets, and Zhang says, well, you know what? I've actually kind of got you dead here, friend.
Right. He's just running the math. I think
down to 4 with only 1 land left, and it happens to be Watery Grave. He does have a Mox Opal, so he only breaks even on the grave, so it's just 1 life that he can gain, and he has 5 damage in hand with the Lightning Bolt plus the Kolaghan's command, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's GG. Wow, Zhang really putting it to him. This game played out much differently than the others.
I think Manuel basically just sees the writing on the wall. He knows he's basically dead here.
I mean, he is dead here, right? Like, just dead here.
He can gain 2 life if he's...
How?
Well, the Thopter Foundry, whenever you sack, don't you gain a life?
Yeah, but he only has 1 mana. If he cracks the Watery Grave, then he loses a life and gains it back, so that's even.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's a Watery Grave.
It's a Watery Grave, not a polluted
I'm sorry,
delta.
I thought it was a delta. At any rate, Zhang shows him the writing on the wall, and this one was done. Boy, that was a beating.
Yeah.
Like, that did not play out anything like the other games that we've seen. That was Zhang saying, yeah, this is how I drew it up.
Yeah, that's the power of Bloodbraid Elf. You know, the fact that it just is such a powerful proactive threat. And you know, Manuel also with kind of a slower start that game, right? He had powerful cards in hand, but it's going to be really hard for you to kind of fight fairly with Jund, right? With you know, the just like trying to play your first play being a turn three spell. You know, that's just not how you're going to beat Jund. You're going to need to have some of those faster starts to be able to kind of overwhelm them. And on top of that, Zhang just had a fantastic draw there, right? Hand Disruption, Dark Confidant, more disruption, followed by the Bloodbraid Elf.
Take a look at the deck list here. Zhiyang Zhang on Jund. This is the main deck. This is the new look. The key card here, of course, being Renin 6 as the new addition to the deck. It fits into the Jund shell perfectly. Does exactly what you'd want to do at the 2-mana slot here.
Yeah, definitely. You know, in previous versions of Jund would play kind of more copies of Dark Confidant, but there are certain matchups where Dark Confidant is really bad, and Renin 6 is a lot more flexible, right? It allows you to still have a way to kind of get ahead on cards, make sure you hit your land drops because it gets back your fetch lands. At the same time, really, really effective against, you know, small creatures when you're playing against affinity decks or you're playing against humans decks or even the Hogyak decks, you know, just being able to pick off random grave crawlers and stuff, there's a lot of utility there. So this is exactly what this deck needed because I think Jund was kind of falling out of favor. Like people were just not playing this deck anymore. And Ren was the card that was necessary to kind of put this deck over the top again. And we see 2 copies of this deck in the top 8.
Is it back?
Oh, it's back.
And this is, of course, one of the new kids on the block here, Urza ThopterSword. Boy, this deck has been really impressive. This has kind of an interesting take on a combo deck. You know, some combo decks are all in on the combo. They are laser focused on doing the thing that they're trying to do, and if they don't, then they lose. If they do, then they usually win. This one has kind of a three-stage approach. You can kind of just play a normal game where it's kind of getting value and doing some things with some Planeswalkers and maybe an Urza, just making a big token or something like that. Then it has sort of the stage one of the combo, which is just the two pieces, the Thopter Foundry and the Sword of the Meek. And then it has the full-on infinite combo when you get those three pieces together with Urza and the other two.
Yeah, I mean, Urza, Lord High Artificer is really what put this deck together. The Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek combination already existed, but it was just a little too fragile. There's just a lot of good artifact removal. People can also interact with the graveyard. So it's one of those things where, you know, it just wasn't a strong deck because many players would just be able to prepare for that. But now you have plan B. You have Urza. I can just win the game with Urza. I can just kill you with a 7/7 construct that I make, along with Teferi, which just gives you some value over time as well. So, I mean, I feel like there were many things that needed to happen to kind of slowly construct this deck, but all the pieces were put in place with Modern Horizons.
Also gets that Whir of Invention with a few of those silver bullet cards in the main and sideboard to give you some play against other decks, buy you a bunch of time. Lots of play to this deck, too. Yeah. This is not one of those narrow combo decks. All right, we're underway here in game number 5. This will be the decider who gets to go on to the semifinals. And who's going to have a short Sunday? That is the question that we're going to answer here. Thank you so much for coming along for coverage here in Barcelona. We're here for Mythic Championship 4. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. And this is our quarterfinals. We've got another set of quarters coming up after this one as well, so you'll want to stick around and see how that goes. That's Alvaro Fernandez Torres.
Oh, this is the start you want here. Look at this.
Oh, hello.
Astrolabe into the Mox Opal into another Astrolabe?
He's playing against Martin Mueller, by the way, just to finish the thought there. So 5 permanents on turn 1, just cool, no problem. We've seen this pretty consistently from Lenz. The only game he didn't do something, at least 3 permanents, was last game. And boy, that one did not end up well for him. A very slow hand, and he was punished
Zhang
thusly.
With a solid hand of his own.
Wow, this hand is unreal for Lenz. He has Urza, Psymaster Thopterist, and Galvanic Blast, plus a land still in his hand. So he can cast Psy next turn.
But Zhang does have...
What does he have?
You know, turn 1 hand disruption spell, of course.
Obv.
So he's got Inquisition of Kozilek, it looks like, that he's going to fire off here. So he will be able to nab that Psy. And we'll need to find some way to deal with the Urza that's in Manuel's hand. And yeah, you're definitely going to be taking the Psy here. There just seems to, I imagine there's just too much of a risk here because Manuel can also sacrifice Mishra's Bauble to draw a card, so he can potentially find an artifact to play next turn, like another Bauble. It looks like he might just be considering the Galvanic Blast as well, maybe because he has Dark Confidant in hand to protect the Dark Confidant, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't take the Psy. Just too much of a threat.
That's what he does. Let's play whose turn 1 was better. Now we'll get back to that in a couple of turns, to be honest.
Ooh.
Pyrite Spellbomb.
Multiple answers to the Dark
Bob.
Confidant.
You call him Bob?
Yes, I do call him Bob.
I do too, yeah. TGO, do you ever call him TGO?
I do not. I do not. Just call it Bob. Everybody calls it Bob. Okay, maybe not everybody, but Dark Confidant, of course. Bob Marr, one of the original top pros of Magic the Gathering, won in Invitational to get his likeness on the card, as you can see there, right there.
There he is. And thus forward, we just called that card Bob. But he's also got another nickname, the Great One, or TGO.
And I wonder if Zhang is still just going to fire off Dark Confidant, because if he does, Manuel can use a removal spell to get it off the board, but then he can follow that up with Scavenging Ooze And Scavenging Ooze might be the more important card here to kind of break up the combo. And I imagine, I mean, depending on what Zhang does this turn, I imagine Manuel is going to be looking to cycle through the Spell Bomb and the Bauble, potentially, because he needs to find land number 4 to be able to cast Urza next turn. I think he does really want to cast Urza. You don't want your opponent to rip a Thoughtseize off the top to get it out of your hand. And Zhang, at the same time, wants to probably put some pressure here. So if Zhang taps out, I wouldn't be surprised if Manuel just looks to find land number 4 for Urza.
And there it is. Dark Confidant, Bob, TGO, whatever you want to call him, he's on the battlefield for Zhiyang Zhang before getting the turn passed. So there's the Bauble, as you mentioned.
Get some information to see if he wants that card.
Does have a polluted Delta on the battlefield this time. And if you'd like, he can shuffle away whatever that top card is.
Really wants a land.
He's going to use the Pyrite Spellbomb to kill the Dark Confidant. So he did lose 2 artifacts, and he's kept it. So
this has to be a mana source.
Yep. It was
a Mind Stone. Interesting. Might have just bought him that one. I just want to make sure I can just slam the Urza this turn. Mind Stone guarantees that you'll play it the turn after, but there's just so many. I mean, you can just have lands, and if you don't, you still find other threats. Like Mind Stone is not near the top of what I'm looking for here generally. But Manuel has proven to be quite masterful with this deck, so. And also just very patient, as we've seen in some of the previous games. And going to be pretty happy here probably to be running out that Teferi Time Raveler. Very good draw.
Yeah, that was his natural draw step for the turn.
Right. Teferi Plus is nice. Gets to play around Lightning Bolt. So Zhang only with a few ways to deal with it, Maelstrom Pulse being the best way to do so, along with the 1 copy of Abrupt Decay.
And that would, of course, eat up the majority of Zhang's turn if he even has the answer. The downside here for Lenz, though, right, is this still leaves him with just 3 mana. He didn't cast the Mind Stone.
Right.
So Urza potentially still stuck in hand if he doesn't find a land on the top of the library.
Well, one really nice thing that he can do next turn is actually tap Mox Opal.
Okay.
Bounce Mox Opal, replay Mox Opal, and you'll have 4 mana.
That's sweet.
And draw a card.
That is sweet. Yeah, you saved the best for last, Paul.
Of
that
course.
Is beautiful.
Who
All right,
doesn't like drawing cards?
So, assuming that Teferi has enough loyalty, he'll actually be able to cast it regardless. That is beautiful. Love that.
Right. And you know, Zhang, I mean, the thing is, playing a creature here doesn't do a whole lot. Neither is playing Liliana. It's possible that Zhang just decides to play Kolaghan's Command, killing the Mox Opal.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, and maybe making his opponent discard a card, or potentially even just get back the Dark Confidant from the graveyard.
Now, Zhang knows about the Urza in hand.
Right.
So he can see this on the battlefield, this play that you just described for us, right there in front of him.
Right.
And may need to do that.
It is in play, and if he does so, then Manuel needs to top deck a Mox Opal to be able to fire off that Urza. And he absolutely cannot afford to have Urza resolve. He doesn't have the answer for it right now.
Yeah, there's other benefits to destroying the Mox Opal. Just keeping critical mass of artifacts down helps for further down the road. There's a lot to be said for that play.
He can set up, however, he can also run out Liliana, tick up, make it so Manuel runs out the Urza. Then
minus.
Then minus Liliana.
Yeah.
Sorry. Use Kolaghan's Command to kill the construct. Then minus Liliana to get Urza off the battlefield.
That's really nice.
So it looks like that's what he's setting up for here.
Yeah, that's really nice. So there goes the Mind Stone. Turn back to you.
However,
Lenz.
if Manuel naturally draws a land, he can just Galvanic Blast the Liliana.
Yeah, he could have, but he didn't.
Okay. He still can. Right?
He could still just do that.
Because he can float the mana from the Mox Opal, draw a card off Teferi, so he can still draw a land here, and he can still play Urza and cast the Galvanic Blast.
Well, he decided to return the Astrolabe, which actually gets him an additional card.
Yeah, it
when
is.
he casts it.
It is more value, but it doesn't guarantee that he would have been able to play the Urza this turn. But he found a land, but he can't even cast it because he doesn't have Metalcraft.
No.
I really feel like he should have bounced the Mox Opal there. And now he's stalled for a turn. He's going to probably fire off this Galvanic Blast to kill Liliana, but now this leaves the window open for Zhang to draw something like a Thoughtseize to get that Urza off the battlefield.
Wow. Playing with fire here is Manuel Lenz, though in the long term, this is more value. It is introducing a significant amount of risk to the game plan. And so he's going to go for Galv Blast. That's going to take down Liliana the Veil, and he also can run out either of the 2-drops. He's going to go for the Goblin Engineer here.
He's going to go put a Thopter Foundry in the graveyard probably, or maybe the Spine of Ishsa if he kept it in.
Oh, that's sweet.
But it looks like it's a Thopter Foundry as he does have Sword of the Meek in hand.
So once again, he's just forcing Zhang to react to him.
This Kolaghan's command is going to be ridiculous, right?
Yes.
Oh, no, it can't. Never mind.
Oh.
For some reason, I thought you thought the same thing.
Yes, I did.
I thought you could kill the Teferi and the Goblin Engineer, but of course you cannot.
You can't choose the same mode twice, unfortunately.
Yeah. Zhang, of course, does need to kill the Goblin Engineer. Might just run out Liliana minus here.
Yep. But, you know, I got to say that while Manuel is being very patient, kind of working his way through it, Zhang has had to react to him every single time. You know, he's just not able to let Manuel untap in a happy spot here because he could just lose the game on the spot.
Yeah, and doesn't look like Manuel's being punished for not being able to play the Urza there as he found a Goblin Engineer too. So next turn he can still run out the Urza. And he's going to be in a really good position from there. Man, we've seen this interaction, this Bloodbraid Elf into Teferi.
It's awkward.
Yeah, it's so tough. He has to kill the Goblin Engineer. It feels like Liliana is the way to do it. Okay, it looks like he wants to take a card out of Manuel's hand here.
Yeah, you know, even if Kolaghan's command wasn't quite as great as we were hoping, it's still really good.
Okay. I like this
Kill
too.
the Opal.
He's killing the Opal and making it so Manuel has to find the land to run out the Urza.
Yeah, you know, if you're Zhang, you're not comfortable, but you're doing what you got to do. But
And he
there's a
finds
land
the
off
land.
the top,
Okay.
Scalding Tarn from the top of the library, and Zhang says, I really needed that not to happen.
Oh, man. I mean, I've really liked the way Zhang has played this game and sequenced his spells. You know, it's really important you're sequencing because you're only going to be playing one spell a turn. And even that setup, because he knew what Manuel had in hand, running out to Liliana to set up for the minus plus Kolaghan's command to deal with the Urza, you know, that was a really, really strong thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the previous turn here, getting that Mox Opal. But now, Manuel has an Urza in play and lots of mana.
He's going to go ahead and equip Sword of the Meek to Urza, Lord High Artificer. The construct does get tapped as a result, but things looking pretty good for Manuel Lenz here.
Yeah, and Zhang just...
It's an Abrupt Decay?
It's an Abrupt... He has a 2, a 3, and a 4 mana spell in hand, so he can still only play one spell. And the Abrupt Decay does not kill Urza. That's the threat that he needs to get off the battlefield, because if Manuel untaps, he's going to have access to 8 mana. At least.
To start using an activated ability from Urza?
Right. So we're going to see Liliana minus, Construct, get out of here.
But now the Urza can just kill Liliana. He also, remember, has that Teferi back up to 3 again, which represents a card if he needs it. He's tapping the sword for mana. What did he find?
No, it looks like he's spending 5 mana here to activate the Urza.
Okay. No, he's only paying 4. Oh, Tezzeret.
Oh, okay. So he funneled one of the snow lands, or one of the lands to make black mana to cast Urza.
That's right. And now he can kind of animate this Arkham's Astrolabe to get in for damage. He can fire Urza over at Liliana of the Veil, and that was a big one.
Yeah, now Zhang is in a ton of trouble. Manuel can just win with what he has on the board. He doesn't really need to assemble the combo anymore, and that's why he had this ThopterSword in his sideboard for the fair matchups.
That's right.
For matchups where they're looking to kill all your permanents or disrupt your combo heavily, he's like, you know what? I'm just going to have extra Planeswalkers in my deck, and I'm just going to play Teferi and just kill you.
That's right, yeah. Tezzeret, Agent of Bullets is -1, just makes a creature, an artifact into a 5/5.
Yeah, and it's great
Just
on cards
stays
like
there.
Arkham's Astrolabe.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is desperation time now for Zhang. He is going to use Abrupt Decay to take down Teferi to maybe open up the options a little later. Here's the Lightning Bolt, and this does kill Tezzeret,
So he'll go
Agent
to
of
1.
Bolas.
He'll go to 1 next turn.
Yeah.
And then he gets the Bloodbraid Elf, but like what can he find? And not only that, Manuel is just basically drawing 2 cards a turn as well. He's got Urza, all the mana available, and look, he's gonna activate Urza, and we get another spin here. But this time it's not a desperation spin. He is well ahead here.
Value spin, if you will. Wow, really impressive here from Manuel Lenz. And, you know, even though Tezzeret died, he left behind a 5/5 and sucked up a spell and kind of forced the issue. It looks like it's Scalding Tarn that Manuel has hit here from Urza. But in the meantime, crash into the red zone and knock you down to critical condition here. Zhiyang Zhang is well and truly up against the ropes as Manuel Lenz with Urza ThopterSword is on the verge of making it
this
to the
Bloodbraid
semis.
Elf. Oh man, no, that would have been good if he Bloodbraid Elf into Fatal Push. He could have killed the Astrolabe. He needs to find a way to kill one of these creatures with Bloodbraid Elf just to stay alive.
There are a lot of cards in the deck that do so. Let's see what he hits. Maelstrom Pulse is great.
Wow. So he can use this. He probably wants to just kill the Urza here. He has other ways to find ways to kill the Astrolabe. And yeah, he now has an answer. He has a chump block here. And he drew the Fatal Push, right?
He
had the Fatal Push. So he can stabilize. So Manuel, I mean, he's stabilizing here at 1 life. Manuel has, of course, a ton of different great draws that he can have, but Zhang is not dead.
We might have a comeback forming here. This is Manuel Lenz sacrificing his Scalding Tarn.
Got to thin the deck out here.
Yeah, he needs to find some action to try to secure this lead and get the job done. He needs very little to win.
Wow. What a sequence of draws here from Zhang. Not only drawing the Fatal Push to have the answer for this Astrolabe, but also, of course, Bloodbraid Elfing into the Maelstrom Pulse.
He finds another copy of Sword of the Meek.
Oh my, this is not going to do it.
That's not it.
So now Zhang...
Zhang is just hanging
still
in there.
Alive.
Sure, go ahead and equip and attack.
Block.
Chump block. Untap. He has the answer for the Astrolabe, and he just found a Scavenging Ooze off the top of the library, Paul. Are we seeing the beginnings of an epic comeback here from Zhiyang Zhang? Manuel Lenz needs some way to get back on board, and it's another land off the top of the battlefield. It's using the library.
He's now going to be able to gain life off the Scavenging Ooze. He can prevent the Thopter combo. Wow.
Scavenging Ooze was a huge draw. He is going to want to concentrate on getting his life as high as possible, as quick as possible, just to play around Galvanic Blast.
Yeah, and also just put additional pressure, right? You want to grow the Ooze here.
Of course. If he doesn't draw a spell here, he will probably just dump all of his mana into the Ooze. It looked like an Inquisition off the top, so it's green, green, green. He's got 3 mana available. That can put him to 5 and start slamming into the red zone, assuming that there's enough creatures, which there has to be.
Right. I'm not sure if there are 6 creatures in the graveyard, if you can, and he's just going for the very aggressive triple activation here on Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, I think he just doesn't have anything else to do anyway. So 1, 2, 3, and then he's got a Bloodbraid Elf. That puts him to 5.
Wow.
And he's attacking
Is Zhang
for
gonna
6.
do this? Is he going to be able to turn this around? He was facing 2 lethal attacks, and Bloodbraid Elf into one of a few removal spells left that could allow him to survive. And Manuel also had to brick off for 2 turns.
And he did exactly that. Zhiyang Zhang hanging on by a thread and now finds himself in the lead in Game 5. He's trying to find a seat. This is funny because what Lenz is doing is saying, is it worth 1 life to thin my deck here? He's decided that it's lethal either
bridge on
way.
the bottom. That is a card he can find. Remember, we also know about Fatal Push. He can find Fatal Push. Urza, of course, would be a terrific draw as well. So Manuel still has many different cards he can find here. But Zhang has turned this game around. It looked like he was 90% to lose.
Yes, he was so far behind and at the mercy of a cascade trigger as well. If that didn't hit, the game was over.
All right, now it's Manuel's turn.
Can he
try to turn it around?
I didn't see what it was. It was a land off the top of the library, and Zhiyang Zhang steals Game 5 in a stunning come-from-behind upset victory over Manuel Lenz. What an incredible turn of events.
Bloodbraid Elf. Bloodbraid Elf.
BBE for LYFE, as they say in the business. Unbelievable finish. Man, he had it. Lenz had it. It was all in front of him, and it came down to that Bloodbraid Elf trigger, and he got there.
It was Bloodbraid Elf trigger to stay alive, and he needed, in addition, he needed 2 removal spells, right? That was a 5/5 Arkham's Astrolabe along with the lethal Urza, and it was perfect because he needed to, the Maelstrom Pulse means that not only that, Lenz didn't get an additional draw off in Urza, right? That was huge. If he found something like a Liliana, you just sacrifice the Construct, right? And you get that extra draw from the Urza, but the Pulse was perfect to prevent Lenz from finding additional outs. And then the Scavenging Ooze.
The Scavenging Ooze was huge.
I mean, it was back to back to back.
That was huge. Absolutely fantastic finish to our first set of quarterfinals. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be at the news desk to get you set up for the other set of quarterfinals here early in the morning on a Sunday. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in just a few.